Going live. Hello, there you go. That's Yahtzee Istaphobe in already. Hi guys, and welcome to PJ's channel, and with guests Problem and Sentinel Comics. We're here to discuss Red Dwarf.
Timing. It's all about comedy timing.
It's all about that, yes. And I've got none of it.
Oh, don't you worry, you're in good company.
So the biggest problem I've got, accordingly, is I talk over people because I get so excited. But I'll try not to be. I'll try and be laid back.
I'm on Captain Cockney Spock's channel and Noel's channel, and they are the experts in talking over people. So this will be like relief for me, quite frankly.
Yes. So welcome, one and all, and we hope you enjoy. So we're going to go around and introduce our guests. Sentinel Comics, you can fire
up. My name's Alan Holloway. I'm the writer of Sentinel Comic. 7 issues down, another 10 or so in the can. We were voted the 3rd best comic of 2020 in 2 independent polls, and it's brilliant. You should all buy it. I need money.
Sales pitch of the year.
I think that's how Stan Lee started.
Makes sense. It worked. It worked.
Right, over to you, Problem.
Hello, I'm Problem Being. I'm commonly known as the regular channel slut. I am often found on Noel's The TARDIS Zone, Captain Cockney Spock, his channel, as well as Daniel Leach's channel. Give a shout to Daniel Leach. And yeah, that's about it. You'll catch me modding sometimes on Nerdrotic and basically just hanging around like a slut.
And myself, you hopefully you know because you're tuned into my channel. So narcissism, here we come.
That's it.
So PJ maybe, and I've been doing this for a year, just over a year. I did my first anniversary stream a couple of weeks ago. So, and thanks to the Scottish Davros, Daniel, I've actually trebled my viewers in the last month.
Well done. Good.
So I'm a happy chap. 37, yes. As I said, even I've got a large family, and I can't even get 37 in my family to listen to me.
Oh. That's a condemnation. That's terrible.
Yeah. Try getting your family to read your comics for free. It's not easy.
My family, none of them are geeks.
Oh, that'll explain it then.
That's exactly it. The only one that would listen to me is my father because he likes all the old movies. He liked all the movies, and he liked a lot of the stuff I did because that's how I grew up, and that's how my geekdom turned. Because I started watching the TV. Ended up never getting away from it. My mum used to call me Bear Eyes because I used to sit in front of the TV all the time.
Yes, I know that one. Yeah, for me, I didn't, I was raised by my grandparents as an only child, so it was kind of like I had to find my own way. I didn't really have any sort of route in other than seeing what I saw on TV and sort of being hypnotized. I think really sort of by Tom Baker, and that was it. I was hooked. I wanted to know more, and there was, I ruined their Saturday night TV from there on in.
Yeah, my mum started me off on Lost in Space before I even went to school. So that was it.
Believe it or not, my dad started me back, and it was Laurel and Hardy. It was all the Buster Keaton, Laurel and Hardy.
Yeah, my granddad the same. Used to watch a lot of Buster Keaton and Laurel and Hardy, and it's much to my grandmother's chagrin. But I loved all that stuff. Abbott and Costello, all that wonderful comedy stuff. It's so great, and nothing to be repeated. You only ever saw things like that in cartoons, really. So it was like these live action cartoons, really, and it was just magic, you know. And I think that that's an art form that's just, you know, thanks to health and safety, will never be repeated.
Well, that's true. You look at some of the stunts he used to do. But I suppose when it came to the next stage for that type of comedy was all not so much slapstick comedy, it was more cerebral, or instead of the pratfalls, it was just stupid, silly, comic timing. As I said, pause there with timing didn't work. And that's, to me, Red Dwarf fitted in because it was cleverly stupid comedy. You didn't need to actually think about it. It just made you laugh.
Yeah. And also, I think as it progressed, it made you think as well, because obviously they were doing pretty much what had been set for them originally, I would say, by Douglas Adams with Hitchhiker's Guide, with the kind of scientific grounding in it. So I think as it progressed, it certainly displayed more of an intellectual prowess, which made it even more absurd and more funny, because it kind of does show you some of the absurdity of current day physics, which I think made me interested in the subject of physics, and also later in life very skeptical of modern day physics because it is so absurd. So it's very interesting how that sort of migrated me through life, you know, sort of as I went on. And it is something like Red Dwarf and Hitchhikers and Doctor Who and things like that, and even Monty Python, which I saw as a very young kid before I'd even seen Fawlty Towers. And it certainly does inform your character, I think, and certainly Red Dwarf did that, you know, because it was something that for me sort of came along during puberty, you know, so it's a very sort of pubescent kind of humor as well, you know, had that kind of snarky sort of kind of like Blackadder in space, isn't it, really? You got that kind of dual character battle between the lead and the support character, who is the butt of all the jokes, and it's a winning formula, and it's peculiarly British, I find. It's better. I mean, sorry.
As they found out when they tried to make it in America.
Yes, like they've done with everything else, you know, like the Fawlty Towers in America was called Pain.
Oh, that was terrible
with it. Yeah, it was pretty awful. I mean, they kept pretty much did the same scripts, but they kind of wrote the relationship between Payne and his wife was that they were still in love with each other. That doesn't work.
They did the same with Coupling. Have you seen Coupling, the Stephen Moffat Coupling?
Yes.
They did that in the States, and no, what they did was 3 seasons, roughly 6 or 8 episodes per season, and over in the States there was a season of 24.
It's about normal.
So you imagine the type, how they extended it, and it just did not work.
But that's a problem as well, because in Britain, the comedy, the humour works because it lays down the build-up to the joke. So you have these long build-up, and then it's not like every 2 minutes you have people laughing. It's one line after another. It's not like that. It's more of a humorous build-up and then the payoff. But in America, it's like joke, and it's like that's why they have so many writers for the scripts over there, isn't it? Because they've got to fill all that space constantly with laugh a minute.
I think it's also they give the impression that the Americans don't have an attention span. Some of the excellent comedies that come out of the States, they're clever comedies. So why some of these programs assume you have to just constantly, and there's no build up. It contradicts itself, because you look at the really good American stuff that came out, and it's clever, it's funny, and it's a slow roll towards a really clever and funny. To me, one of the better ones was Third Drop from the Sun. John Lithgow, it's like that was just was silly, but it was just so cleverly silly as well that it seemed to work because they didn't seem to push all the time for 5-minute jokes. A joke.
Yeah, I think they tend to mature now. I think with that kind of humour, by sort of employing it in sort of more dramedy stuff. You know, like Illegal Alien. Resident Alien, not Illegal Alien. Resident Alien. It's more in the style, I would say, of British comedy, which is, you know, it's in a situation and the jokes aren't every 2 minutes. You know, it's kind of like it has that nice build up, sets up the situation, then, you know, build up, crescendo, joke, fall, and then sort of you have these nice peaks and troughs which lead you through it and keeps you engaged in the story. So you're not just constantly looking for the next gag, you're engaged in actually what's happening. Yeah, rather than sort of leading from one.
Did they only do that for 10 episodes, or was that mid-season break?
No, I think it was just the first season, which is a much better way to do it.
And because normally they usually have to have one every week or so. Maybe that's why the Resident Alien's so good, because they realised they had the season to actually do it. But I don't normally watch new stuff at all. I like the classics, and I have watched Resident Alien because Alan Turyk's in it, and from Firefly, Tucker versus Evo, Tucker and Dale versus Evo, such like. So I find them humorous. So I suppose I watched it because a couple of people had recommended it, that I know their sense of humour matches mine to an extent. And I gave it a go. And I must admit, I wasn't disappointed. And I find it surprising considering it's new stuff, because I normally find new stuff too flash. It's just almost a case of here you go, here you go, here you go. And then, oh, bang, here's a joke. Flash. And you're sitting there thinking, where's the story? But that
you find it does help when things are based on something a previous work, like a book or a graphic novel, because you've got characters rather than just cardboard cutouts. And Resident Alien had characters, emotion. You build those characters, then they throw in a few jokes, then you get some more character building, rather than just, like I say, sitcoms in America tend to be 22, 24 episodes a season, and because of that they become very repetitive. If it's fun and it's good, you still watch it, but you don't get a lot more out of it than some fun and repetition. Whereas the hour-long programs these days are 10, maybe 12 episodes tops, probably because they cost more money. And so they don't tend to overkill with those. But even so, you get things like the Marvel series on Netflix, which I thought every single one of them was too many episodes. Because they're just, you could have cut 2 episodes out, made a tighter story, but they're also told you have 14 episodes, so they dragged it out to 14 episodes. So I'm hoping, Falcon and Winter Soldier, 8 episodes, fine. No need to go any further, or 6 or whatever it was. And I like the fact that Disney are actually not sticking to everyone else's structure like this. They just sort of, this is the story. How many episodes will it take to tell it? It's a better way to do stuff.
Yeah, proof really that comedy by committee isn't always the best way to go. You know, Suits aren't generally the best judges in humour and how to dispense it. You know, I think that that's why I kind of love older comedy, British BBC comedy in particular, because it's so well paced out and so well considered. And I think in part, really, well, probably more than just in part, a lot of it does come from very intelligent people who have a very, very good sense of humour. And I don't think you can really underplay the importance of a very good education. And I think that we can't underplay, as much as the woke mob of today would love for it not to be true, that the Oxbridge footlights mob really did understand the art. It was a craft, you know, really was. And they had the intellectual nous and that oddball humor and that kind of reactionary thing to the institutions that they belong to. This irreverence was absolutely a shining example of sort of the sort of British attitude in facing the absurdity of modern life. Yeah. And I think forward-thinking shows like Red Dwarf sort of takes that to quite a new level, because I think that was almost a sort of rejection of that, but also a continuation of that. I mean, I think you had Rob Brown, I think was from Salford or something like that. So again, not part of that kind of massive intellectual elite of the uber upper echelons, but the BBC itself seemed to give that kind of grounding at that time, and it even sort of through the alternative comedy of the early 80s, it kind of opened things up, but it still had that kind of continuity, the BBC sort of grounding, I guess, you know, and it had that pull through. So even a lot of the not Oxbridge universities were producing comic talent, but it had that landing strip for them to come in and then sort of take off with the BBC logo slapped on it, you know, and it had that the upper echelon still in charge of the BBC at that time from these places, sort of steering it and still making it sort of viable for the mass audiences. So you had that, and like obviously cultural shifts changed and things like that. And I think it was really because of what had been set before by Pythons and all that, but you had the young ones as well, which came along and also was punk really of the early 80s of TV comedy. And I think that sort of really progressed through the 80s. I think the 80s as a whole really stands as that kind of flipping it on its head. It still had that kind of educated intellectual nous to it, but it was much more from the wider demographic, I'd say. But yeah, that's me waffling.
Yeah, but then again, we all do that.
Yeah. Please, I think
British comedy has a difference to most American comedy, and that it doesn't aim to shoehorn in demographics when it doesn't have to. Yeah, Red Dwarf had the main cast of the early Red Dwarf was 2 black guys and 2 white guys for no other reason than they were the right guys for the job.
They were the best guys for the job, and the character development shows how well they were. And since we're going for season 1, I take it you know the precursor for Red Dwarf.
No, go on.
Which was Grant Naylor's comedy sketch. Was it Dave something Space Cadet?
Yeah, it was. I haven't heard it though.
I've got it. It's
excellent.
It's a very, you can see it's an early draft of how Red Dwarf was going to go, and it was actually not bad. It's not as like you could see where it was going. But it wasn't. It was a 5-10 minute sketch, and it was just the one guy just basically talking about how he's a space cadet, and just talking about it and his lead up to it. And it's just the ideas there, and you can see how it changed to Red Dwarf and the expansion on the characters. So in effect, Dave Lister was Dave, the space cadet. And you could see how it grew from that.
I think as well,
it interesting.
It was, I think, because Channel 4 was a new kid on the block, wasn't it? And it was very much championing the new comedy, you know. And I think the BBC wanted to kind of get that youth audience as well.
Yeah.
And so you had this sort of explosion of youth culture on TV. Remember, you had all these youth TV shows that they used to mock themselves. But I think you had a lot of comedy sketch shows which did produce a lot of comedy. We had comedy sketches from French and Saunders that turned into Absolutely Fabulous. You had the comic book. What's it?
Comic Book Presents.
Comic Book Presents. Yes, it's the. They did the famous the 5 go to
Five go mad on Dorset, 5 go mad on mescaline. Big fan.
So I mean, he had all that, and obviously produced things like The Young Ones and things, and BBC Two and all that picked up on all of this stuff because they wanted to make BBC Two kind of challenge the new kid on the block, which was Channel 4, which was already sort of edgy and look at us. And I think that was good. It really sort of shuffle things up a bit at the BBC. I think they really do kind of need maybe some of that with the current situation with all the streaming. So maybe we can have a bit more kick up the bum for the BBC.
Yeah.
Son of Cliche. That's the one. Thank you.
I saw that in the chat, and I thought, yep, that's the one. I couldn't remember what the show was they did it in. But yes, Son of Cliche.
Comic Strip presents, but that's it, Babette. Well done. Comics.
Yeah, that's it there. So we've got a lot of people in there.
We got that one.
As we go. And I see some of the other things they're talking about. Naked Video, nice Scottish comic.
I love that.
I saw that. I actually saw that live, and I saw them doing it because it's obviously it was filmed in Glasgow. So I got tickets for it. It is superb.
Was that the one with Stonybridge?
Rabsy Nesbitt. No, that was absolutely.
That was absolutely.
Easily confused to us Southerners.
I love that. I've got the entire box set of Absolutely. I think it's one of the best Scottish exports. I think it's absolutely brilliant. One of the best comedies of the 90s. I
still remember aspects of that. Absolutely, like when he actually bought stuff. It was on sale, and he says, "I'll show you how to save things." He'd phone up to book a holiday and then try and get a discount. As soon as he got the discount that matched the money he just spent, he says, "No, never bother." He says, "That's how you save money." It was just so surreal. You're sitting there thinking, what did I just watch? I suppose it was the same idea. You had to listen to it. It was silly if you just listened to it as it went. But if you actually thought about it, it was so cleverly done. It was just amazing. But I suppose we could go from Son of Cliche to season 1 of Red Dwarf.
I knew we were here for something.
Red Dwarf got on TV because this was all leading up to that. We weren't just all rambling.
Preamble.
So I forget what I came in here for.
The red what?
Oh well, they're dead, Dave.
They're dead. Everybody's dead, Dave.
Yes, they're dead, Dave.
Dave, they're dead.
Kachansky? What about Kachansky?
Yes, well, with the age difference, it would be insurmountable.
I think that has to stand out for me. The funniest of the whole entire episode. That for me was just it was. I think Holly, actually, for the first series in general, is for me the funniest character. That and the existential toaster.
Talkie toaster.
Such a Douglas Adams trope, really, isn't it? Like, let's be honest, it really is. But I love all that. I love the talking machines. It's so Douglas Adams, and I think that is a key element to the success of
the food processor with the lisp.
Yes.
It was like Douglas Adams light in a way. Because Douglas Adams always seemed like it was written by a very smart person. Red Dwarf seemed like it was written by two blokes pissing around at the pub.
Yes,
but still very funny. It just didn't have the gravitas in a way of Hitchhikers. Although Hitchhikers was silly, it was so smart. And Red Dwarf, you were allowed to just laugh at Red Dwarf without thinking you were clever, which was suited me down to the ground.
Yeah, if you look at Red Dwarf as well, it was clever because they set up so much in the first couple of episodes that for later in the season, it called back to it so well without shoehorning it in. It's just something else happened, and you think, oh, they mentioned that in the first episode, or they mentioned that in the first season. And it's that aspect of it I just thought was fantastic because, as you said, it was just silly comedy you could laugh at, but something else happens, you think, oh, wait a minute, that's clever because they've already set that up couple of seasons ago in some respects for other stuff. Sometimes it's literally with it, next season it'll pop up again, but they just let it run particular ways. But and there's other aspects of it is canon doesn't matter because
to be fair, they set up Cloister, the god of the cat people, and paid that off in the very last episode in the feature length one, the Promised Land. Yeah, so that's a long callback.
That is a hell of a callback. Yeah.
But it's just the even in Waiting for God, you had the cat priest. Yeah. Noel Coleman. He's in actually one of my favourite Doctor Who episodes, War Games. He's the general in War Games.
Oh, yeah.
So he is. And he played... Yet, see, initially when I first saw it, I never even put the two of them together. It's only after I've watched it so many times you realise...
And of course
he's from...
You got Mac McDonald.
Yeah.
It was in Alien, wasn't he? Or Aliens. It was, it's just like all these weird sort of things you just don't really connect in your head.
Well, Claire Grogan, CP Grogan, apart from being in Gregory's Girl, she was known for her
Altered Images.
Happy Birthday.
I love that.
And yes, she's now CP Grogan because I think there was another Claire Grogan, so she had to register and it was CP Grogan. But when I first saw her in it, I'm sitting there thinking, she's in Altered Images. And then obviously I watched Gregory's Girl and you're sitting there thinking, actually she can act a lot better than you realise because it was such a short part she had. And seeing her popping up here and there throughout the seasons, it was just great. And then you had the other one, Mark
Chloe
Williams.
Annett.
What was that one?
I thought you meant the other Kachansky, Chloe Annett or Arnett.
Chloe Annett, yeah.
And I liked her as well, but it was weird having another actress. It's always weird when they replace someone.
Yeah,
like Crichton.
Crichton as well.
Well, the Crichton replacement did work.
Yes,
and the Chloe Annett one, I suppose it worked because she came from an alternate dimension. So
yeah,
it's not as if it was they went back in time and brought her up. So and then they had to justify how it was a different Kachansky. So I suppose it's sorry.
Episode one,
the end.
To the end.
The end.
I mean, I can't remember watching it live, though I must have done so. And the theme tune, that theme tune comes out of nowhere. It's like, what am I watching? Did he goldfish? What?
I mean, it's so bonkers.
I know
it's almost as if it's
just superb. But it's just even
it reminds you of a bygone time
in those type of atmosphere. Oh, it's about space.
It reminds you of a bygone time, like the 50s or the 60s, you know. But it's got this juxtaposition with this lonely spaceship in space, and everyone's dead. And you've got this jolly.
Yeah.
It's almost as if it was like part of some kind of sales brochure for traveling or signing up or something. You know, like some kind of jingle.
It's one of those theme tunes. You don't skip it. That's the thing. No. When I watched the season again today, and I watched every episode, I played the theme tune at the beginning and the end. Sorry, I'm being attacked by the cat.
And of course, the music, the incidental music. You know, the very dark, serious lone trumpet. You know, it's just really quite eerie.
And it works very well because although it's eerie, it's not out of place in a comedy. It highlights certain parts, certain scenes that you don't know what's going to happen because the way the music comes into it, you know you're about to get a laugh, but how are they going to do it? Because the music doesn't tell you, ready for a joke.
No. Yeah. No telegraphing whatsoever.
it's no telegraphing at all, and I think that's what makes the jokes funnier, because you're getting into something very serious, and then they say something, and you just sitting there, what? And
you can imagine an American, again, it's usually American to do this. When the cat comes on, a jaunty tune will play. It's the cat's theme, and it's like, oh, no, we don't want that. We don't do that in Britain. We're far too serious.
If they wanted to have a jaunty theme, they just got Danny John-Jules to sing and dance.
Yeah. Oh.
I'm gonna get you, little kitty.
It was a bit based. They had to flesh him out a bit in later seasons because there wasn't much to it, to be honest. James Franco on your teeth.
It was definitely a cat, a narcissistic, only cared about it, because I had cats, and I think my favourite cat scene in series 1 was him washing his clothes by licking them.
Licking them, yeah.
That was great.
That's disgusting.
Yeah.
But it was just the way they did it, and even the character building of each of them. The cat, they didn't need to actually let the American one. They had everything that was in the first season, maybe 2. They had that when they introduced the cat, so everything was there.
And there's a version they did.
And you're sitting there thinking, no, it gave you no way to go with the cat, because they introduced in America the cat came on, and he's basically he's got his string, and it does this and it does this, and then and you're sitting there thinking, that is the things that the cat did gradually, because you first saw the cat, that's mine, that's mine, that's mine. Look, I've got a string. Look at this, it did, and you're sitting there thinking, you've crammed everything in the cat just on the pilot. Where are you expecting to go from there? And
then they had one with the female cat, didn't they? In the
yes, they did. I keep on thinking, for some reason, the one that played the female cat was the one that played Jadzia Dax in Deep Space Nine.
Really?
But I don't know. I've got both of them. I need to check it out. But every time I see her, for some reason, I just go to that actress. Because obviously they had Hilly was the one that played Daphne and Fraser. She played
Jane Leaves.
She played Holly. So she did. The guy who actually played the cat was someone that Danny John-Jules admired, who was a dance teacher. And Danny said that in one interview that he was so pleased that the person who was imitating him was someone he looked up to, and as an inspiration to him. And I thought that was quite nice. They've obviously got a similar type of character, a dancer, an actor, dancer, choreographer, and such like. And I suppose if they'd just left it the way they introduced the cat, that character could have worked.
I don't think the rest of the cast were very happy though either, were they? Because they were like expecting, packing their bags, ready to go to Hollywood. No, it's just going to be the Crichton guy. Yeah, Robert Llewellyn, and that's it.
Yeah.
So,
he hated it over there. But considering they didn't actually turn up until later on in the seasons, it's a wee bit. I thought it was disingenuous that you had the ones that were there from the beginning. Yes, I can understand why they wanted to actually bring their own cast in, but
I quite like the guy who. I know it kind of looks silly because he was like this kind of chiseled, good-looking lead guy playing the solicitor role, but I thought he wasn't too bad. Actually, I have to say, I thought he wasn't too bad. I just think it was wrong.
Craig Bierko was his name. He was a hunk.
Aye, and that was. I think that's where it worked, because it wasn't just because yes, you can have a hunk in that, but it was they still used the similar lines that Danny where Craig Charles, he goes on about being a slob and he couldn't get on with women, and you're sitting there thinking, really, have you looked at you?
Exactly. You can't imagine that. You can't imagine that bloke having curry for breakfast. And spilling most of it.
And you can't imagine him having a problem going up and asking for a date. No,
And he's also never worn his underpants for more than one day at a time.
Never.
The actress you were
He doesn't
thinking
even
of,
wear underpants.
and you can guarantee had more than one pair of pants.
the actress you were thinking of was Terry Farrell from Deep Space Nine.
And she played.
In the second pilot.
Yeah.
I can't remember who she played in DS9.
Yeah, Jadzia Dax. She
That's
played
it, yes.
So she did.
I just wanted to ask you guys as well, like the inspiration for Red Dwarf. It kind of is reminiscent to me, and I really was thinking about this on this current rewatch. And it's like it does kind of remind me of that 70s science fiction film Silent Running.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I wondered if there was some connection with being sort of a sort of inspiration for this, because it does have those sort of tropes, you know, the lonely man stuck on a spaceship, you know, with pretty futile situation. And the robots.
But the thing about Red Dwarf, what they needed was, you know, we need to do a sitcom, and the first thing you need for a sitcom is a sit. And the sit has to be situation where it has to be somewhere people can't escape from. So the young ones, they're stuck in that house together. And where is a better place to not be able to escape from? And they wanted to do sci-fi than in deep space. It was a bit of a genius move. And they're stuck on the ship. And obviously, as they went along, they needed to somehow give them more characters to play with. But considering up until they recreated the ship, they did the whole thing basically with 4 characters, was absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Or 5 characters, sorry, with Holly. I mean, it is an ideal situation, and then you just got to mind the jokes out of it. But the way they did it, as you said, in just series 1, where the jokes would call back to previous episodes for a debut series, a silly space sitcom, it was incredible.
Yeah. And of course, you know, if you're stuck on one ship, you know, you've got a permanent sort of set situation, so you don't. So the budgetary confines are kind of, you know, even though they're stretched, you're not having to go to a different alien planet all the time or all that. You're stuck on one particular set for pretty much the majority. Well, definitely for the first series for sure.
They didn't suffer from a Blackadder syndrome.
Yeah.
Which was let's spend a million an episode on something that's average, and then Ben Elton just came and Ben Elton made it a sitcom, you know, and that worked. It worked so much better anyway. The first Blackadder so hit and miss. It tried to be something it wasn't, and the where they refined it just improved it so much. The Red Dwarf never needed improving. It just needed expanding a little to give them more options.
And I think also making Edmund the smart one rather than the Weasley one, where the first season of that they had Baldric as the smart one and Edmund as the Weasley one. Whereas when they brought it back later on, Edmund was the intelligent. He just was always put upon, and Baldric was Baldric.
And that worked.
And
yes,
it definitely did. I think they couldn't have brought it back if they had Edmund like that throughout the different timelines.
Because he was so annoying.
Exactly. It was just so annoying. Whereas someone like Rowan Atkinson, you could see how he could play both just as well. But the confident, put upon, always used character who was very intelligent and just didn't like anybody, he played it so well.
Well, it's like he was a modern day man set back in that time period. It was so advanced. And he was just like, I can't believe I'm having to deal with these primitive, you know, idiots, and they're all contemptible. And he's always crafting his cunning plan to climb that slippery ladder, like a snake, obviously. And everyone was just in his way. That was funny because he was so po-faced about everything. And you do see that with kind of in a reversal of that, really, with Rimmer and Lister. So they're both incompetent, but they're also both have their intelligent sort of reasoning, their own internal logic. But obviously, Lister is probably more street savvy, and Rimmer it's thinking he is far more in advance of everyone else when he's really not, you know. So it's a brilliant juxtaposition between those two. And then you got Cat, who's just completely mental, and you got Holly, just this bored computer that's been sitting around for millions of years, just like thinking up jokes to, you know, keep himself amused. You know, it's just. I mean, just that in itself is comedy gold. I mean, it's just absolutely bonkers. You know.
And even the, as you were saying, the situation, how that changed throughout the seasons. Like, it started, he was the lowest run of 169 people on the ship. And look how they changed it, because they realised they had to say, well, it's a 5-mile vessel, 169 people in a 5-mile vessel. Didn't work. So suddenly they had to grow it. But initially they were saying there was only 169 people on that ship.
And he was ranked 169th.
Yep.
One thing about the relationship between Lister and Rimmer is the source, or the novel, the first novel, Red Dwarf, which has Lister. Yeah, Infinity Welcomes Careful Drivers, where Lister's a taxi driver, a hopper cab. And he picks up Rimmer and takes him to a brothel. But that does give you the fellow Lister lives in the real world, and Rimmer's he's a duplicitous little shit to everybody. It's not just Lister he hates himself, and by definition everyone else. And I like that. The novel's incredible.
And also the reason why he's on the ship changed because of that book. Because the book had him. Yes. He was on a night out and he got drunk and he woke up in Titan. And he had to find a way to get back to Earth, so he had to sign up. Yep.
And the reason he got Frankenstein was to deliberately get put in stasis. The cat, and it was the cleanest, most non-diseasey cat in the universe. He didn't actually want to put anyone at risk, but he knew if they found the cat, which he did deliberately by taking photos of himself, he would get put in stasis and therefore get back to Earth. A millisecond after he got put in stasis. So in the series, it wasn't a plan. He just looks like an idiot. But in fact, it was a very cunning plan that Baldrick would have been proud of, I think.
And that's another thing as well. Like in the penultimate episode, he's tired of being shoved around, so he wants to become the ranking officer. And smartly enough, he goes to the lowest rank he can find, chef.
Be a chef.
But we know he.
That's how did you do, Mr. Lister, sir?
Yeah. But we know he cheated. It's kind of addressed in the opening Holly bit, isn't it, on the final episode? But we don't actually see him using it or being called out on it or anything like that. It's not really addressed, isn't it? That I thought was quite interesting. We're
just told in the next episode that he failed.
Yeah, that he failed, and it's not really addressed.
The dynamic would have changed.
Because Lister, it was a case of you're using memory enhancement drugs. I want to know who, from where, and when. Arnold Rimmer, his locker this morning. So it's basically the fact that he had the memory enhancement drugs, or the whatever they were called, and he was using them when he got caught. But then again, even when he was cooking, he came in with this fantastic cake.
Yeah,
it's not that good. It's meant to be stew or something like that. A roast beef. That was there were so many really good lines in it, and even the introduction of the situation was done very well, because in the first episode you already knew everything you needed to know about the characters, because you look at it, you knew Holly had been sitting for 3 million years and he was going a bit peculiar, even though he's a super intelligent computer with an IQ of 6,000 PE teachers.
Yeah.
I mean, but the fact that he'd been there for 3 million and he would say the most cringy, silly things, or make up jokes, or even ask to get parts of his memory erased just so he can
read Agatha Christie again.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a weird thing. recently I saw Murder on the Orient Express, the new version of it, and I've never read the book or seen any of the films, so it's the first time I've seen it and obviously learned about what happens. And so watching Red Dwarf today, I finally got the joke where he goes, hang on, Poirot's just got on the train. I reckon they all did it. Which is, yeah, I have that, and today I got that joke. Before it didn't make any sense. So that's quite cool.
But that's what I'm saying. The joke was still funny, even though you didn't know the joke. Because
I reckon they all did it because you think he's being stupid.
But that's what I'm
Whereas
saying.
in fact,
if you think about the humour, it is actually a lot smarter than it appears because it's funny in all levels, and I think that's what shows good comedy. Because it's like when I used to sit down and watch Morecambe and Wise, Laurel and Hardy, Abbott and Costello with my dad. My dad would be laughing at things that I didn't find funny because I didn't understand. But they would both of us would be laughing at the same things 10 minutes later because the type of level, I could watch it as a kid and find it hilariously funny. My dad was watching it as an adult and find it funny for a different reason. And it was because there was so many tiers to certain comedy acts. There's other ones that it doesn't matter, you're getting it at the same level because the comedy's just aimed at that level. Like Norman Wisdom was very slapstick and silly. There was nothing intelligent about it. He was just a very talented man who could do these things in a funny way. Whereas you had things like Laurel and Hardy, some of the things they did, you're sitting there thinking, as you grew older, you realise it meant something different or the way you could interpret it different. And it's that type of thing. It's, I suppose, the same. It's what a lot of people say about The Simpsons. The Simpsons were funny in all levels. You just...
I would like to take a chance to tell my favourite ever Simpsons joke. Right? Because not many people even notice this sort of thing. Where Bart's a big fan of Krusty the Clown, and there was a panning shot of all his Krusty merchandise. And the one I didn't notice it at the time, I've seen it freeze framed, was Krusty home pregnancy testing kit. Warning: may cause birth defects. It's a family show, and that sums it up for me.
But that's like if you look at sort of the Victorian age, and right through to modern day, pantomimes at Christmas, you have a show which is on one level a show for kids, but also a show that keeps the adults interested by adding jokes in, which is double entendre, where adults will go, well, that's a bit naughty, and I can laugh at that secretly to myself. I mean, I can't really say it's great, but I mean, just on the sort of extent that how humor can work on multiple levels for a family audience, and still have something for the adults in the room is also quite good. I think that's sort of ingrained in British humor anyway. I think that's always had that nuance to it, which I think is why it works on so many levels and is popular amongst all demographics.
Yeah, and I suppose it's even the way they make up their swear words, because they know sometimes they want to say something rude for a situation. Smeg. What is smeg?
What's a goit? Shut up, you goit.
I think the West Country, they say goiter, don't they? So,
but even like simple smeg, some people actually recognise that it was a brand for white goods.
Cookers, fridges.
Yeah, I mean,
Frank Smith.
Yeah,
I
I must admit, just before the lockdown started, we were out, and I must admit, I wanted to pick up a Smeg toaster, just for the simple fact that it was Smeg, and it was a toaster. I just wanted a Smeg toaster, and I could just call it Talkie. And
if any company's going to invent a Talkie toaster, it should be them.
Definitely, just with the name Smeg, and it is a word that's meant to mean a lot of different things, but it can mean what you want it to mean.
And it can happen.
Smeg off. It's like you can go, smeg off, you smegging smegger.
It can happen. My mother's got a talking rice cooker from Korea. It speaks Korean, admittedly, but I mean, it does happen. So keep an eye out.
I hope
But it's the same
that in
idea as
Korean,
well.
I hope in Korean it just says, "Would you like some rice?"
Yes. That would be awesome.
But the idea of just the simple word smeg, because you think about it, if your kids watching it or whatever, somebody's young and they say, but what does smeg mean? You're not turning around and saying it means F or it means this, it means that. You could say it means heck. That's all he's
Heck
saying.
off.
It's just a so,
every swear word.
It could mean you could actually say it can mean every swear word or none. So if somebody doesn't like the idea that it means a swear word, they just say, well, it means darn, or it means a lot. It means heck. It means darn. It means
it's just made up.
It's just a made up word that sounds. It's like Father.
Mind you, they did get away with "let's get out there and twat it," which I had. Of course, I had on a shirt.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So, I'm curious, both of you, which episode of season 1 do you think is the best? Watching it now, as you know, not just because it was the first one, number one, but which one do you think is the most creative or funniest or best episode?
Well, I think the most creative one, it has to be the second one where they have that they go through times.
Me too.
Break the time barrier.
Aye, Future Echoes.
Oh yeah, Future Echoes. Oh, that was bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, you can see all the sort of flaws with it because you think, well, they've just said that, and that bit comes there later, so that character should be standing there when it's happening. But
Rimmer going in and out the drive room was very clever.
Oh, that was very well done.
That's very well done.
It was. It's just. Having to do that twice. One, he had to have done it on his own.
Yeah.
And then he would have had to do the exact same.
Same eye movements, motions, everything else.
Exactly. I thought that was very intelligent. And I think you're right. Future Echoes is one of the... It's the most well thought through because even just the wording in some of the scenes was, I have to go with and he was sort of tripping himself up with the language of it would have going to probably, and you're sitting there thinking, how did they get that sentence out? I can't even listen to it. I can't repeat it. And yet,
I think for me it's Me Too with the two Rimmers. The second, they were introduced in the previous episode, and then they had the episode with Rimmer falling out with himself was very good.
My favourite of that. The first season, I just loved the whole idea. What do you mean, killed him? Cha cha cha.
I love the two Rimmers because I've met enough narcissists in my life. You can just sort of imagine those very people in that situation where they sort of meet themselves, and at first it's all hunky dory, but by the end of it, they just want to kill each other.
And of course, it does set up another gag that was called back to several seasons later, which is gazpacho soup.
Yeah.
Yes.
Something else I'd never heard of until Red Dwarf. I thought they'd made it up. Nobody's cold soup.
I had gazpacho soup before I saw Red Dwarf, and I thought it was meant to be hot. Because I tried it.
It's true.
It's been lying too long. I'm just going to leave it because it was cold. And I got it at a buffet, and I thought, because that's your letter. Tried it. Oh no, it's been lying too long. It's cold. So I put it down.
Every year, do you have that day in your diary? So every year you can have gazpacho soup.
I don't need to put it in my diary. It's a couple of days after my wife's birthday, so.
But
my wife's birthday is Doctor Who's.
I thought that was a great episode because at the end, when he was getting all that out of Rimmer, that he'd already deleted the other Rimmer. That was very well played.
Yeah,
a nice little twist.
And it's funny because you instinctively knew which was the first one and which was the second one, isn't it?
Yeah, just to be the acting, although they were acting identical because obviously they were. They just there was enough nuances that you knew what one was what.
Yeah.
It's very well done because it's not as if they actually, like Futurama, they suddenly had a wee moustache and
Yeah.
that type of thing. It's just, it seemed to, you knew what one was going out, but there's nothing here. Can you not enjoy an execution? You obviously knew what one that was. You, even in the cinema, you knew what one was what, because I'm just sitting here. And the funny thing is, I didn't like the second Rimmer. I loved the first one, but I didn't like the second one. And the two of them acted exactly the same. And it was
more exaggerated, I think. He did seem. I think it was like some kind of weird feedback or something. So it just made the second one even more irritable.
I think maybe it came from the fact, I think, that Rimmer was trying to irritate himself. And he gave him a different energy than when he was trying to irritate Lister or being irritated by Lister.
It was
sitting in front of himself in the cinema was fantastic.
Infinite loop of, it's a one-man up ship, and it was just never ever going to work out well. It was just going to keep building up and getting worse and worse and worse and worse. Brilliant. And as well, I love just an aside. I was just because. If I have something pop in my head, if I don't get out, I'll forget. But it's how Holly also enjoyed winding him up as well. It's like the silly hair and the different body parts and all the rest of it. I love all that. And
Peterson's was hilarious.
We've still got an emergency. It's still going on. I just love Holly. Holly's my absolute favorite.
To me, I've met Norman Lovett, and I used to watch him before he was on Red Dwarf because he was in a few of the alternate comedy shows as I was growing up. So I had seen him on. It's the same as I'd seen Craig Charles or his poet stuff prior to appearing in Red Dwarf. Used to sit and watch him doing with Ben Elton, introducing him as I can't remember what they classed him as. He was a poet, but it wasn't a streetwise poet. It was, I can't remember. They had a phrasing.
Was it Saturday Live?
Yes, but they had when they introduced him, he was a particular type of poet, and I can't remember how they described him. But I remember watching him, and in one of the episodes, I must admit, he's talking and it comes across as if he's doing his poetry because of the way he used to speak and when he was doing his poetry. And I think it was the Me Too when he was talking about whose, like he would talk about the pop-up Kama Sutra, and it's just to be the wording of it. He would say it in such a way. I thought, that's him going back to the way he used to do his poetry because of the way he used to he pronounced his words.
But it's got quite a kind of poetic nature to the character anyway. He's kind of like a bit of a working class poet in his own mind because you catch him being quite philosophical and asking all these grand questions, and then of course Rimmer's just there to deflate any notion of these highfalutin ideas because obviously that couldn't possibly happen for someone so inferior to him. It's always being foiled, but somehow he always seems to come out on top and be sort of vindicated, which I like.
I think it's because I think the way he actually produced it, or he produced his character, was, I think some of the times he was going back to his poetry start in life, as it were. So when he's actually stating his information, so like he's doing his lines, if he could have just actually said them and they wouldn't have had the same impact. But I think it's the way he puts it forward because he has that as
pathos.
He's got that pathos as part of his character. He knows how to bring it out, so you could feel it. He was so good at it. You could actually say a line, and he could say it in such a way that you can feel the inner poet, as it were.
Well, that's kind of what made him relatable. Even though we would find 90% of what he did revolting, but he was so sort of the cheeky, chirpy, chappy, sort of, but also spoke sense in quite absurd situations, especially when facing with someone so extreme as Rimmer. He is kind of like the counterbalance to that absurdity, and they're both caricatures, but they're both sort of relatable in terms of we all know someone like them.
Yeah.
Which I think is the genius. You've got this crazy setting in space. You've got this kind of uniform, nerd geek, but from the dark side. Then you've got this slob slacker who's street savvy but revolting, but has this kind of ongoing spirit within him, against the odds, and you see that when he's sort of facing his own mortality, when he has to go and face his death, he's just like, he goes there with a baseball bat. He's like, I'm not going to go down without a fight.
Which is very, even when he was talking about getting into stasis for the trip back, it's a case of, well, it's going to take us 3 million years. And what's going to happen in the time leading up to my death? It's a case of I might as well just go back into stasis, and at least I'll survive to get there. Whereas obviously there's other aspects later on where he goes into stasis for short term because of he's trying to get access, or he's trying to catch up with something and stuff like that. But they could have actually got around a lot of the things by using that. The fact that the amount of stasis and all that, so each episode could have started with him coming out of stasis because something's happening. If they wanted to, like the Doctor's TARDIS, they wanted something that they could say, this is how he's getting from place to place. Oh, well, we want something cheap. Oh, police box. Don't. And that way he's landed. They don't need a spaceship, shuttlecraft and all that. It's just a police box. Whereas they could have done that with, because it's episodic, was the fact they could have had him waking up from stasis because something had happened.
Yeah, that would have been it would have worked, I suppose.
They would have done things like waiting for God, even the balance of power. In the first season, they just seem to follow one after the other, and it basically.
The way it works is, whereas if they'd done that sort of structure, every episode been, this is a crisis, how do we solve it? Whereas what they had is more, this is just what happens. It's not necessarily a crisis. It might be something good, might be something bad. It might be nothing at all, but let's just watch him do it. It's what happens.
Yeah.
I just love the fact
they had brought him out. It's not necessarily needed to be a crisis of the thing, because they could have come across something, I suppose, they need to investigate, which they did later on in... With Spacebug, they were chasing the dwarf, and they met Legion, and they met the simulants, and all that. They did that later on, but I think as the first season, I think the fact is they didn't do it. They seemed to follow one after the other. I think it was over 18 months. According, there was one line saying, in the 18 months since I've woke up. So those 6 episodes is 18 months, so it's not a long time.
Feels like it's a week.
But in the grand scheme of things, I love the fact when he came out of stasis, it wasn't like 1,000 years or 100,000, 3 million years. He's like, bloody hell! Like there is no denying at that point there is no way back. But he still has this kind of optimism. What about Fiji in my dream? And it's just, and he's there licking all these pounded remains. I don't know what they are. I love that payoff from that gag was. This is what we're talking about earlier.
You were saying about the 3 million years. That to me was one of the big differences that you can tell between the UK and the American pilot. You look at it, 3 million years. What was the first thing Lister said? I've still got a library book out.
That's right. Yeah.
That's it. I was trying to think. Yeah.
Whereas in the American pilot, what was the first thing he said?
God,
my baseball card must be worth a fortune.
That's not too bad either.
Of, oh my goodness, I'm going to owe a fortune. And the other one was, oh my goodness, I'm rich.
Okay.
Yeah, I think in the UK, I think it's quite stark thing. We laugh at misfortune.
Yeah.
But in America, they laugh at success. You know, that's a really interesting cultural difference there, I think, as well. Because I think Americans generally find laughing at misfortune distasteful. But and that's why you find a lot of the sitcoms over there are generally very well-to-do middle-class families or living in a well-to-do sort of situation, isn't it? Because I think they feel uncomfortable laughing at people who are misfortunate. But I don't know, because they love British comedy. So it's a bit of a juxtaposition there. I don't know who's in charge over there, but I think they got it round the wrong way. But they also don't have the same class structure as we do. They do, but they also don't at the same time. It's quite different. So I think the class structure within that sort of microcosm of Red Dwarf, you've got Rimmer, who's at the bottom rung of the hierarchical ladder, still finding himself over this one guy, and he absolutely lords over him. And then Cat, who's like a completely different race. Yeah.
It's not a hierarchical ladder at all. It's a ziggurat.
Well,
that's fair.
Up the ziggurat, lickety split.
Lickety split.
Just be clear, Grogan.
Yes.
And I just thought, and it showed the difference between the two, even in that scene. And having a women's period. Women don't follow that. River would know, because he's never been around. It showed the difference between the characters as well, of how they deal with other people. One thinks how women thinks, and the other one knows how women talk. And it's the big difference with the Claire Grogan scene with the Kachansky coming in when he was cooking.
And when he tries to pretend to be Wachowski as well, and it's just so painfully obvious it's him, because he just doesn't have a clue whatsoever. It's just that was a very interesting case study, really, of Rimmer's absolute lack of experience, which is, again, laughing at someone's misfortune, because it's made him this terrible human being, and it's infinitely hilarious, you know. And I think there is a dark nature to British comedy, which really comes to the fore in this show.
Can I ask if either of you, just curious, have a favourite all-time episode?
Oh, wow.
What one would I go back to rewatch multiple times? The problem is I never watch one at a time. I binge watch everything.
I mean, mine is back to reality. I love it so much.
I would say Horsemen of the Apocalypse if I was going to actually be forced to pick one. And I think it's because it just looked as if they were setting it up a particular way, and then they got all their skills deleted.
Yeah.
It just it set up a particular way. You think, oh, this is going to be, you're going to see like Rimmer, the bare knuckle boxer and stuff like that, and the Riviera Kid.
Yeah,
you know I mean,
the comedy kid.
It's just the ideas of shooting the bullets out of the air and stuff like that. And I thought, I wonder how they're going to go down this, and then deleted. Oh, I think that's what it means. But even Back to Reality was just such a fun episode as well.
Timothy Spall was great. But you didn't realise that the microdot was in the eye of Rimmer's bronze swimming certificate. Didn't you always wonder why he had a swimming certificate? He couldn't swim. It's like, oh my God, it's a blatant clue.
I think one of my favourites that sort of sticks out for me is Quarantine.
Oh, the Mr. Flibble.
Yeah, I can see
Oh.
it's gloriously bonkers, and I think that was a peak Red Dwarf series
Yeah.
fight.
That was a good one.
Yeah. I still want to actually do a Mr. Flibble cosplay. I must admit. Just the whole idea, just don't know, walking down with a gingham dress on. Mind you, it means
I've seen I've seen a cosplay as Rimmer with the puppets, which was very good. The gingham dress and everything, it was fantastic.
Well, I've done my Rimmer, but it was basically not as the gingham dress. I basically, me and my daughter did cosplay as Rimmers. So we did.
Brilliant.
And that's when we met Craig Charles. So both of us did it because Craig Charles was at the Comic-Con.
Excellent.
So must admit, he made my daughter's day because when we first went up, he stood up, gave her a salute, and she was over the moon. And then when we went to meet him, and he was doing a talk, and both of us went. I stood up to ask a question, and he recognised us, and he gave her a salute again. So he did basically the junior and senior technician, because instead of just saying thing, I had senior because of my age, and my daughter had junior. So he basically remembered and brought it up, and she was just over the moon. It was just one of those things. I thought it just goes to show there's somebody who can make somebody's day just by give them a salute. It's just superb. I can't do it now because of this thing, but this doesn't work the same way because I can't get the twist. But it shows the type of people they have in the show. I don't think there's. I know there was the. I suppose the breakup between Grant and Neil, and I know Norman Lovett left because there was issues, but I think his issues were also the fact that he felt his part was being downplayed because they brought the Crichton character in, and the Crichton character could do everything that Holly used to do, but he could also move around.
Yeah.
So they need to have somehow for Holly to actually tell them all this thing. Crichton could do that. So I think that's why Norman left. But before that, there didn't seem to be any issues. Yeah, accordingly there was. Accordingly, the two, Craig Charles and Chris Barry, didn't like each other initially.
Well,
no, definitely not.
No, but it never came across on screen.
Well, I think it kind of works because I guess you've got that savagery between the characters, so they can probably vent their spleen and sort of let off steam at each other in the characters, and maybe that's what the chemistry. That's what was there to bolster that chemistry. Maybe that's why it worked so well on screen because it was there off screen. Maybe that really played a part. We'll never know. But whatever it is, I mean, it was absolutely perfect casting, regardless. Oh, Tadako's got a comment there.
It's basically Norman left because they were moving filming down to London, and he wanted to stay close to Edinburgh. Yes, I actually remember that. But I thought it was initially he was thinking about leaving before that, but I could be wrong. I usually am, because as I keep saying, I'm a jack of all fandoms, master of none. I've got so many things that I watch, rewatch, think like. There's so many things I forget, and I'm getting old, so I'm just putting into dementia.
Well, I'm a survivor from the 1990s, so the fact I've got any memory at all is rather fascinating.
Well, I'm a survivor from the 1980s. The fact I actually didn't break something going down a slide, playing on a pogo stick, going down, doing anything that we did day to day, and I still survived.
Yeah, but I think for I mean, I'm 46, but the 1990s was a particularly exuberant time in the sense of sort of going out and being less responsible with what you imbibed, so to speak. So yeah, to be a survivor of any memory is.
See, the thing is, by the time the 90s hit, I was already hitting 30.
Well, yeah. For me, it was let's go out and yeah.
Yeah, I'm a child of the 60s.
So
basically,
I'm in the middle. In the middle of you both.
Yeah, that's why I keep on telling people I'm not old, I'm classic.
I'm old.
Basically, I've got I've got the body of a 29-year-old with the mind of a 6-year-old, but my body wonders why I'm not dead yet.
That's a juxtaposition.
Basically, I'm getting to the point where I stand up, I make noises.
I already do that.
Well, I do that, but it's the fact is, yeah, I can sit and watch a cartoon and people are going, that's a kid's thing. No issue there.
What's the point of growing old if you can't be childish sometimes?
Exactly, that's the great Tom Baker once said. Yes,
yeah.
I remember that one. That's one of my excuses. And
that for me absolutely exemplified his Doctor. Really did.
It was childish. He basically he didn't take things. He took things seriously when needed, but he didn't take everything seriously because he was a kid at heart. And
I think he took very much the sort of Troughton line, throwing people off with his absurd sort of cosmic hobo kind of buffoonery, and then sort of at the same time he's distracting them with that. He's actually thinking 10 steps ahead, which I love.
And offering them a jelly baby, and they go, huh?
Yeah.
It's that
disarming. Yeah.
But I think that's, I suppose, good characterization, because you can see the different levels within each character. But I suppose certain characters need to actually have levels inserted. But we'll not mention Cat again.
Yeah. Cat is
was a one-dimensional character.
One note, yeah. That's the funny thing about it, though. It shouldn't work. A one-dimensional character should not work, but because he's there primarily to create silly situations and to be a general nuisance, it does work. It does work, and it's very strange because I can't think really of any one-dimensional character that is that infinitely entertaining. That's really strange, isn't it? Can you think of any?
I can't think of any. And the way I look at it as well, you look at a cat, imagine a cat in human form. I can't see anything by John-Jules' character in season 1, because I can just imagine that's what a cat would do. No interest. Your legs falling off? Oh well. Because I like you, I'll no steal your boots. It's that type of thing. And
it's funny because you've got Lister, who really doesn't give a shit, and then you've got Lister, you've got Rimmer, and you've got Cat, who are both exemplary narcissists. And then you've got this incompetent computer, and it's just like, it shouldn't work, but it bloody does.
And it works so well. It's almost a case of, why did they survive 3 million years?
How did they survive? All the people to survive, the least deserving out of any, it's just brilliant.
But you look at the whole cast, the least survive. You've got the...
Hello. Oh.
You've got Holly, a senile computer who's been on his own for 3 million years, and he's gone a bit peculiar. So how can he actually still maintain the ship? You've got Dave Lister, who is the I don't care. Although I've got a plan, it's a ridiculous plan, but I don't want to. I had to get rid of my career. You know what I mean?
He's got his internal logic, which
He's
in
got
that
his
universe
internal
makes
logic, but
sense.
it's the fact is, you look at him. He's a slob. He's got no career prospects. He didn't want to get tied down in a career, so that's why he stopped collecting trolleys in Tesco or whatever it was.
It's lack of ambition.
It's lack of ambition. And then you've got Rimmer, who's so narcissistic that he's a joke of himself because he's incompetent and narcissistic. And then you've got the cat, who is the son of a cripple and an idiot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, his father was an idiot, or whatever they called it, crazy, or the jelly bean head. They did a couple of references to how nuts he was.
Yes.
But the fact is, you've got 4 characters who've got really, really bad faults.
Yeah.
They're all endearing.
We should get them all killed. It should get them all killed.
But
And
they're not only are they successful, they're endearing. Even the worst of them, Rimmer.
Yep.
Remember Rimmer World.
Yeah.
But it's the fact is, you've got 4 major flawed characters that everybody loved.
I think the main dynamic that gets them through stuff in the early days is Rimmer's crafty and Lister's brave. You put that together and you can get out of shit.
Yeah, that makes sense. And of course, you got the cat. He just doesn't give a shit one way or the other. He's a coward.
He's
but
expendable.
It's also a self-survivor. Yeah, exactly. And of course, you've got Holly, who is somewhere between incredibly incompetent to incredibly intelligent. So you just don't know which one you're going to get.
Which Holly you're going to get.
Yeah.
Long as you don't get Queeg. I love that episode too.
Oh, yeah. Queeg was just so fun. It's basically, how many times has he done a Jeep?
Yeah. That was quite a Jeep.
The Fast and Light fighters that's coming up because Norweb has got a final demand for him. He's basically wanted because he's left a sandwich and it actually covers three quarters of the world.
I love that, and he brings out the joke glasses and nose, and it's happy April Fool's Day. It's not April.
I'm not going to sit on this.
That's an April, May, June, and July Jeep. It's basically, but there's the fact is, how many other Jeeps has he done throughout the years? Yet he can still do Queeg, and people fall for it.
And he's so deadpan. It's the deadpan voice that cracks me out. Like Holly is my absolute favourite. Love his iteration is my favourite character.
I think Norman Lovett was the right person to bring it to life, because if they were wanting deadpan, it suited Norman Lovett's character so well because that was his humour. That's actually in Hattie Hatridge, because she was always known as the female Norman Lovett because that was humour. She was great. She was great as well. And it's because the people refer to her as the female Norman Lovett, and it's because her humour and his humour were so similar. Very deadpan delivery and such like.
Perfect casting replacement. Yeah, perfect. And again, it was, when I was rewatching the first episode, it wasn't really until Holly came on that I really started to laugh out loud. I was laughing throughout, but it was when he first pops up and is doing the Everybody's Dead Days. that was what a great entrance to this character. It was just it just brings a smile to my face because it was just so funny. It's just like, how many times can I keep saying the same thing over and over? The more he kept trying to say it, just accept it, it just got funny.
You look at it, they did exactly the same joke with Craig Charles when Confidence and Paranoia.
Yeah.
Your hallucinations have manifested into real. What are you trying to say? Your hallucinations have manifested and they're real. I don't understand what you're trying. And it's literally kept having to say the same thing, and he just don't understand. Yeah, it's very similar to the Dead Dave scene. The only difference is it's obviously cut down, and it was just that. But they obviously used the same idea. So does it show that the Lister is no smart as he likes to think he is?
Yeah,
Or,
and it's great as well because they all in this situation all forced to be together, and they're just barely being able to tolerate one another, and that is a mine for comedy because it's just not a single one of them understands each other at all. You know, there's this contempt between all of them, and it's only when Crichton really comes along. It adds almost like a counterbalance to all of that, and you feel empathy for Crichton because he's kind of the one who's now put upon, and he can't win no matter what he does. So,
yeah, because he's bullied by Lister because he's always wanting to give him his freedom. He's bullied by Rimmer because he wants everything done for him, and he's bullied by the cat because
he's tugged all which way but loose, isn't he?
Exactly.
He's pulled in all different directions, and that's why he's always sort of like, oh, "What do I do?" You know, and that is, and usually when you bring in a new character like that into a set situation with a small number of characters, you would expect it to upset that balance and to not work, but it had the absolute opposite effect, and it added this whole new dimension to the whole setup. So I'm really looking forward to rewatching the upcoming series because it's been so well. It hasn't been that long actually. I watched the first 5 series a few months ago, so I'm going over it again.
Well, it's great. I did the same when just after I got the season 13 DVD. I've got a habit. I used to do it with my books. Now I do it with audiobooks, but if I knew something comes out, like for instance a new season or a new DVD of Red Dwarf with season 7, first thing I did before I even started sitting watching it is I would watch it from episode 1 all the way through. I used to do it with Wheel of Time. I was a big Wheel of Time fan, Robert Jordan's books, and my first 5 books are so dog-eared they're falling apart, paperbacks, because every time a new book came out, I dug my books out and reread them. And then I started getting them in hardback because my first 5 paperbacks were falling apart. And I've always done that. I can't not do it. The only time I can get away with not doing it is for the simple fact is if I don't have them. So if something else would pop up on TV, I've not seen the preview, or I've seen them on live TV and I didn't have a video or a DVD of it or whatever. That's the only time I would ever do that. But normally, if I get my hands on something, I have to watch the whole thing before I watch the new one. I'm terrible for that. I've always
See, I can do that with comedy, but I can't do it with very many other things, except obviously Doctor Who and things like that. I really am sort of tuned into. But if things like Blake Seven, I can watch that infinitely. But when it comes to like sci-fi series or anything sort of not absolutely in tune with me, I will watch it once and very rarely go back and watch. Like even if a new series will come out, let's say for example Resident Alien, I love it. I absolutely love it. I love the first season. Chance of me watching the first season again when the season 2 comes out, I will just watch season 2 and I won't go back and watch it. I can't understand why. It's just that.
See, I'm the opposite. When season, as I said, Resident Alien, I'd recommended. That's the only reason I'm watching it. I think it's the only new thing that I'm watching.
I could probably do that with the Orville. I could probably rewatch that from the start because I think because so many of those episodes were so consistently funny or entertaining.
Do you know what the
I
Orville
can do
reminds
that.
me of? I know
Go on.
it's everybody says it's a parody of Star Trek, the original Star Trek.
Nah,
It's more of a parody of Galaxy Quest.
Yeah.
it's the next generation with jokes, but enough. But it's not all jokes. That is not. I don't see it as a parody. I just see it as another sci-fi show
No,
ripping off the next generation and being more amusing.
It started that way. I think it's
Yeah.
I think
I think that's how he got away with it.
because it was more humorous.
Yeah,
And
he
then
got
as
away
we
with
realised
it.
They didn't need all that humour. It was just a case of just put in what normal people would do in certain
I think
situations.
he wanted to get Star Trek, didn't he? I think that was
Yes.
He wanted to make Star Trek in his own way. Couldn't get the rights, so he thought the only way I can get away with making Star Trek is by doing a parody. So I think that's how he sold it. And certainly the first season was certainly parody. I think the second series was a lot less parody. It was much more stand on its own. It was a lot more serious, a lot more dramatic. And I think the second series really sort of matured into itself and became very much its own thing, certainly within the realms of being very Star Trek. But it was very much less parody, I'd say. It had all the tropes, but I don't think that in itself made it a parody.
See the Orville. I think it's very similar. Believe it or not, Star Wars. Did George Lucas originally not want Buck Rogers or no Buck Rogers? No, Buck Rogers. It was. Aye, Buck Rogers.
Flash Gordon.
Was it Flash Gordon? I thought it was the Buck Rogers one. He wanted it, and because he couldn't get it, he wrote his own story. I think it was Buck Rogers because Buck Rogers, the first one, Buck Rogers was Buster Crabbe.
Yeah.
Who did appear in the Buck Rogers in the 25th century.
Yes, yes, he did. Yes.
He did. But the fact is, I think before George Lucas was looking for that and he wanted to purchase it and they wouldn't sell him it, so he went and made his own, which became more famous than Buck Rogers could ever have been. And I think that's what it is. I think if the Orville continues its the quality and the very good storytelling and keeping the humour at the level of that's the type of thing you would expect to see rather than just joke humour, as in people throwing in jokes where you don't expect them. I think that can become as popular as Star Trek.
Yeah, because you don't get very many examples of successful science fiction comedy, do you? Really?
No.
I mean, you can get that in films certainly, but in TV series, not so much.
Hyperdrive.
But no one really remembers that. You know, it wasn't very well known. I think it only had, was it 1 or 2 series? But
there was a terrible one with Miranda Hart.
Oh God, don't.
That was. Don't forget Molly Sugden as well.
I love
Mrs.
Molly
Noah.
Sugden. I'm a big
song about Mrs. Noah. I've never seen it. It does look good. The problem is science fiction was always too expensive. The problem is it's too expensive, generally, and so they really had to get the numbers to even think of making a second series. And again, most of them are crap.
Yeah, but it just goes to show that the way they did it with Red Dwarf is, as you said, they put it on a spaceship with the idea that this was it. So there wasn't big set pieces. They didn't need to worry about anything else. There is the set. It's the same as like Married with Children. There is your set, your living room, or your workplace, or the the kitchen and living room are all part of one, or the bedroom. That was it. So they needed 3 sets. Red Dwarf, what did they need? 3 sets.
Yeah. Well, the cinema, the drive room, the bunker, and the corridor or 2. That's about it for the first series. And they're very important when you go into the BBC and asking for a budget. You know, can you make it with this much money? And it's like, yeah, we can do that. But if it had been like one of the later series, they've had no chance, or it would have just looked awful.
And as well, it was great. You know, it wasn't very overly complex. It was, you know, tables and chairs in the canteen, a few flashing lights, a console, and you know, the bunk room was this kind of very basic. I mean, it was very utilitarian, which makes it very simple in design. And I think probably more money was spent on the model and the model shops probably than the rest of it.
Yeah,
I say it worked because they didn't try too hard, and they didn't try too hard probably because they couldn't afford to.
Yeah.
So in the end, the lack of budget makes it better.
Well, it does, because it forces I think the writers to be more creative, actually, because the more limitations you have, the more creative you're forced to be to make it as entertaining as possible. And obviously, if you're restricting everything to a bunch of corridors and set rooms, then you know you've got to make the story compelling. You've got to make it really funny, and you've got to set up these situations which engage the audience. You know, because you've got this kind of grey rooms and everything, but the comedy has to be excellently well written and performed by the absolute perfect casting, which we were lucky enough to have.
I think that's as well the perfect casting, because I was looking at my old review of Promised Land almost a year ago. Well, June last year, I got it, and I was thinking, how could they move it forward? And I heard rumours that they were thinking about recasting it, and I thought, who could they get that would be so who could fit into that role, and you think, I can see it. And I can't imagine a single person to take over newcomers to take over those parts, because it's the same as the Crichton character. The guy that did it, Dave. I forgot his name then. I still forgot. The guy that did Crichton initially, Dave, whatever his name was, I can't remember. I do apologise. If he'd actually come back, there would have been no issues, because he did work in that episode with them, and it's the juxtaposition between how he was wanting to help or want to do everything Rimmer said, but he also wanted to be his own man with androids. You know what I mean? And it worked. But when they brought Robert Llewellyn in, you could see, he didn't actually sort of stick out like a sore thumb from the first episode, and then you gradually bring him in. He just seemed to fit straight in. And now, who could you imagine playing any of the roles?
It's
like anything.
It's like Blake Seven, you know. You can't imagine anyone play. I mean, I know there was attempts to recast them for audio drama, but when you get someone like Paul Darrow, for example, who is absolutely irreplaceable, and it is that character forever, like indelibly marked. I think it's almost impossible to do it justice, you know, because it's so lightning in a bottle. You know, you'll never get another Tom Baker. You'll never get another Avon. You know, it's the same with this cast. I just, you know, that's why I think the American version, apart from the writing and the casting, you know, however good the cast might be, will never be the same. And you don't have that chemistry. And that chemistry is something, it's ephemeral, but it's also integral. So it's something you can't just sort of repeat. And I think as well, we're going back to the idea of how I think in current era that everyone's so fixated on special effects and putting money into things. And you look at how Doctor Who, now they've got more money than ever. They've got all this wonderful production techniques and this, you know, they've farmed it out to these fantastic people who do all these amazing effects, and it's all very grandiose and cinematic. But the writing and the acting and the chemistry just isn't there. So you can throw all this money at it, but it doesn't make it better. And this just seems to be something that seems to have been lost. If you look back at the success of Red Dwarf, it wasn't because they had all this budget and it all looked fantastic, although Red Dwarf did actually look good as a model show, but it was the limitation. It was the perfect casting. It was the concentration on the budgetary restrictions and what you could put across on screen in a creative way to keep it entertaining and keep it funny, keep it well written, keep it tight. And that's lost. It seems to be a ever decreasing lost art. You know, I think that's quite worrying. I think it would be to the benefit of the BBC and people like that those kind of media corporations to actually cast their eye back and think what made TV successful. I think it's somewhat very, very lost at the moment.
I do have something I'd like to share with you since you brought Paul Darrow up as Avon. I've just been reading this book. It's not, I didn't write it, you're right. It's called Whiffle Lever to Full by Bob Fisher. It's been around a while. I just bought it the other week. And it says somebody described Paul Darrow. He looked like he had a crisp up his arse and was trying hard not to break it. And I think that sums up.
Oh, I love that description. That is superb.
And it was his birthday on May the 2nd, God rest his soul. And he shared his birthday with my late grandmother as well, which explains everything about why he was so witty and frankly brilliant. Oh, we've lost Alan. He's gone.
Alan.
We've lost him to the sideways world.
I think so. Basically, I don't know if he's seen me, but I can't hear him. But see what you were saying about Blake 7. Believe it or not, do you know when it sort of went downhill for me with Blake 7? It was when a particular thing was lost. Was it to me? It's as much a character as any of the characters, and it was the Liberator.
Oh yeah,
it was such an iconic ship, and then suddenly they had
Scorpion just didn't have it, did it? Like
no.
Slave wasn't anywhere near the same level of wondrousness.
Because initially they got on that ship because they were sent on it because it was alien technology and they didn't know if they were going to die, so they get sent on it and to go over. It was I suppose it's like some of these older ones you used to get, with the fact is things would happen. Somebody would get a piece of technology that was so far advanced, like American Hero, with the outfit and stuff and things like that, and they used that. But as soon as you take that away, then it's just a crew in a normal everyday ship.
Yeah, the Scorpion was a nice ship. The interior wasn't so nice. Slave wasn't as compelling as Zen. I would have liked, if they had gone on to a 5th season, to have found another Liberator, basically, like a cloned ship or something. Yeah, that would have been good.
They had it. Maybe when the Liberator was going, they basically found out where it came from.
Yeah, well, I mean, didn't it come from the what they called the system? Wasn't it the alien? They were like a kind of like a Cyberman race.
That's, I suppose, not where it came from, where it was built, so they could go and liberate another one.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was the thing. It's the same idea as, what was it? Peacemaker Wars. The one with Moya, the ship. I'm trying to remember what it's.
Oh God, you got me on the back foot with that one.
It was the one with most of the puppets and stuff like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. Come on, somebody in it. What was the ship? I know the ship was Moya, and they had the pilot, but that was a bioship. And
someone in the chat will know.
Peacemaker Wars. It's God. Farscape.
Yeah, you said it. Retro Dicky said it.
Farscape. Right, Farscape. It was the same idea. He was brought from another part of the galaxy or the universe and through a wormhole, and it wasn't because he was there and they had a lower technology. It was the fact that when he landed, he came across this group who had a better technology, as in Maya, the bioship.
And then Lex as well. Lex was a similar situation. I think a lot of these Lex and Farscape.
I love
Lex.
Lex.
I love that. Bonkers. Lex
it was
Farscape.
absolutely nuts. It's just the robot head trying to get rid of Stanley all the time.
Right. Yeah, trying to bump him off all the time. Yeah, it's overly sexualized robot. I think as well, it was, I don't think without Blake Seven, we wouldn't have had Lex, Farscape, or perhaps possibly even Red Dwarf, because there is that element to that, the ragtag people suddenly taking over the ship, lost in space, or have, a quest to fulfill. And there is an element of that, I think. I think there is. It's become a bit of a trope, and I know that Blake Seven started off as a sort of a British cynical version of Star Trek, but it sort of ended up sort of rebounding back into popular culture. And I believe as well, Deep Space Nine was kind of looking at Blake Seven as inspiration. So it kind of went round about. And then obviously we had Farscape and Babylon 5 and Firefly and Lex and all this kind of definitely. And now we got this new thing from Sky TV, which is this kind of uber feminist space wank thing that's coming out. It's very Blake Seven again. It's just ripping off Blake Seven. So it does seem to have this kind of compelling force about it. It's so ingrained within science fiction culture, and I think sort of Red Dwarf doesn't have that, and it surprises me because you'd think that Red Dwarf would have inspired a lot more science fiction comedies, and I don't imagine for a minute really that the Orville, being one that sort of stands out, has much in the way of a connection to that. It's quite very different, isn't it?
I think it's completely different. I think the ones that sort of did have an influence on aren't ones that hit very well. So you had Hyperdrive. British made one. But I'm getting a bit of an echo.
It's not me, is it?
No, I'm wondering if it's me because I'm bouncing back onto my.
Put myself on mute.
Hello, Nick. Anybody hear an echo? No, it's no. I think it's just maybe my system because I did have to flick. I got an email. I got a message from Alan. His phone died.
What?
His phone died.
Oh.
So we'll have to finish without him.
Oh,
we'll get back on. But the things like you had Hyperdrive, which
I only remember watching the first
I'm not denying it. It's an acquired taste. As I said, I've got weird taste, and I am aware I've got weird taste. It's mighty. I could just turn to the side and see some things that people don't like.
I love Space Knight. I used to have one of those. I used to have a couple of those Eagles.
Yeah. A 1980s one. It's basically
that's what I had. Yeah.
I've been trying to get one of my friends to print off and do a 3D print version.
Nice.
But it's silly stuff. I like things that people go, why do you watch that? Or why do you collect that? Because I like it. And I don't get put off if somebody says, that is rubbish, you shouldn't like it.
Yeah,
don't watch it. I'm okay liking what I like, and I'm okay you like what you like. See if we've got a bit in common, that's what we'll talk about. See if we've got nothing in common, we'll talk about something else.
That's
How many people don't like Magic the Gathering?
Yeah.
I like Magic the Gathering, but I know there's not a lot of my friends or people I talk to who know what it is, never mind like it. But it doesn't bother me.
Well, why should it?
The fact is, you should always. The way
if it bothers them, get new friends.
Well, the way I look at it is, I've said to Daniel in the past, is see if somebody tells you you're crazy for liking something. Why are you listening to them?
I've got to kick Daniel's ass actually because I've seen in the comments that because I was there when the ending of Blake 7 got spoiled for him and Noel, and it's been an uphill struggle since then to try and get them back on track to watch it because it's been spoiled. Well, I'm like, it was spoiled. Listen, I watched Blake 7 when I was very young, right? It used to be on when Doctor Who wasn't on, and I watched it, and I never, as a kid, saw the final episode. So then I many moons later watched it all on YouTube when it was all up on there before it went on BritBox. And I was watching it again, and I happened to tell someone, started watching Blake 7. I hadn't watched it since I was like 5 years old or something. And I said, oh yeah, that's the one where, what happens at the end. And I was like, I didn't know that. Thanks a lot.
I understand that because, I did see it initially. So I know what happened.
Yeah, I watched it as a kid, but I couldn't remember how it. Didn't know how it ended, and I hadn't seen it since 1980 or 81, whatever it was. And I still watched it, knowing how it ended.
Yeah,
and it was just because the characters were so brilliantly crafted. The interplay between Paul Darrow's Avon and Aurak and Villa, and it's to live for. The stories are great. The writing is so snappy and sharp and witty, intelligent, and it doesn't matter how it ends. And how it ends doesn't necessarily mean that's how it. Because if you listen to the Big Finish audios as well, it does go beyond that. It's not necessarily how I would have gone with it. It you can't just take on face value either. So there is always, and I think there's some, there's the books Afterlife. I haven't read that yet, but I want to, which I heard is mixed reviews. So I don't know. But watch it, Daniel.
It's the same idea. See, like you look at it, Blake 7. They thought when Gareth was leaving, what was going to happen? Oh, it can't go any further because it's called Blake 7.
Yeah.
Blake's no longer going to be there.
And Captain Cockney Spot just calls it Avon's 5.
That's what I'm saying. You're sitting there thinking, but why is it called that? Because there's no character called Blake in it. There's only 5 of them, and then you're sitting there thinking, what? But it makes zero difference because the name of the show doesn't need to represent who's in it and how many's in it.
Well, it's the idea, isn't it? Because they're freedom fighters, so they will always be referred to as what they would have been coined as, which would have been Blake 7. So whether or not Blake is there or not there, it's still, that's the reputation that precedes
Starship
them.
Troopers, Rico's Roughnecks. Yeah, Rico. It was initially the Roughnecks was somebody else's, but he took over it. He didn't take over. He just took over the Roughnecks. So the Roughnecks were still the same, even though the guy who they named it after was gone. He still kept the name.
And Daniel, I know how stubborn you can be. That's why I'm equally, triply, megally more bloody stubborn than you. I'm going to kick your ass. You're going to watch Blake 7. You'll bloody like it.
It's retro. You talking about Blake 7?
No, I'm talking to Daniel. The comment.
No, I know. I'm just saying. I noticed when you were talking to
Daniel.
Right,
yeah.
But Daniel, he knows I need to actually. He's going to come on my channel sometime over the next couple of weeks. Need to tell us what we want to discuss, and if he wants to, Blake 7.
Do it, Daniel. Just persevere through it, because again, it's not how it ends. It's the journey. It's the journey. It's the characters. It's the situations.
Put it this way, Daniel. If you don't like the endings ruined, why did you buy Blu-rays? Because that means every story you've got in Blu-ray you've watched already.
Yeah, you already know how certain films end, and you still watch them.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
I can walk into the last 10 minutes of a movie I've never seen, see the end of it, and sit down and watch it and still enjoy it. Yeah. I've always been like that. I that's why when somebody says spoilers, I still watch it because things can't be spoiled for me, because I'm not going to give it the
If I stopped watching every show that was spoiled for me, I wouldn't be watching hardly any TV at all, because especially in today's day and age, if you're not watching something that is current, right? Let's say shown in America but not shown in the UK, you've got to find a way to bloody watch it, because you can't avoid it being spoiled, because the Americans have it, and they'll do videos and tweet about it all day long, and you'll be like, well, I can't avoid it, so
not
I
go
have
on
to watch it
social
somewhere.
media at all, or you just get it spoiled. But the thing is, I've always been like that, even before we got a a video player. The things that were on, it was repeated, the old movies. I would sit down, my mum says, have you seen this one? Yeah. Not going to stop me sitting watching it again.
Well, one of my favourite films of all time is Young Frankenstein, right? And it's infinitely hilarious, right? I can watch it, still laugh and I know how it ends. But it doesn't matter, because it's the journey that counts. And what a fantastic journey Blake Seven gives you. It's infinitely watchable.
And that's what I keep on saying. It's the story. That's why I like the classic Doctor Who more than.
And if you can decanonize the Timeless Child, you can decanonize the ending of Blake Seven if you choose to, But I mean, I think it's a fantastic ending, and it wasn't actually meant to end that way. It was meant to go on for a 5th season. So it would have carried on. So we don't know exactly what happened. It could have been something.
That's like the old Buck Rogers ending. A bomb go boom, and the ship explodes. And then next week you find out something else happens. They jumped out the ship before it exploded, or something like that.
Exactly.
It was meant to be a series ender, not a show ender.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's the way you need to look at these things. It was a series ender, not a show ender.
That's right. So how they operate. Somehow the protagonists find a way, and something happens, and it isn't what you imagine it to be. So again, you may have been told how it ends, but you don't know why. You don't know the situation that leads to it, and the story itself that leads up to it is compelling. So you have to kind of watch it to really understand why you get that shock ending. But again, is it really the end?
Yeah. That's the thing. But it's as Retro said, it's a classic cliffhanger, and everything has to be. If you know the show's coming to an end and they're telling you this is it, this is the end, that's the only time you would take the final episode as writ. Because
and don't forget, there is. I mean, Daniel's a big lover of Big Finish.
Yeah.
There is also huge amounts of Blake Seven Big Finish, which fill in the gaps between seasons, but also events that happen afterwards as well. And you can canonize it or you can decanonize it, pick and choose as you wish. There's novelizations as well that touch on what happened after the final of the series, season D.
Yeah.
So, there's ample amounts of extended media which you can delve into to satiate your need to know what happens next. So,
well, that's true. You look at even Red Dwarf have done it. Red Dwarf did it.
Well, how many times has that series ended?
Look at the time when they met the old versions of themselves. Better snag than dead. You know what I mean? Or they basically fire the garbage cannon and they get destroyed, and then they explain how they're back. That's basically, they could have finished it then and there because they're all dead. They're dead.
Yeah, and then Red Dwarf isn't in it. The ship isn't in it. So right. I mean, well, how can you call it Red Dwarf when Red Dwarf isn't there? And then they find it again. So I mean, it's take it with a pinch of salt. What you hear isn't necessarily how it plays out, and how it plays out. It's the nuance of it and the storytelling behind it. That's what makes it interesting. That's what makes it absolutely essential viewing. because again, it's not the result. It's the process. It's getting there.
It's the same as you. It's the old saying, isn't it? It's not the destination; it's the journey.
Yeah, exactly right.
Exactly right. That's the way you should look at it, because it's the same as, like I was saying, the canon. When people say, "I," but as soon as that happens, it becomes canon. It's only canon if you accept it as canon, because even these people are turning around saying, all that, like Star Wars, see all that extended universe. Oh, sorry. See all that extended universe stuff. That is non-canon anymore.
Yeah, bullshit.
Canon, but stay tuned for next week so you can see what happened at the end of this story. Well, if canon doesn't matter, why should we worry what happens in next week's story? Because you can change it. Canon doesn't matter. Canon exists. Canon matters to an extent. It just means that you can determine.
It's agreed upon. I don't subscribe to the idea that canon is something that's what's given to you by the official source, right? For me, canon is whatever is agreed upon by individuals. So if a group of me and my friends decide The Timeless Child is not canon, it ain't fucking canon. The BBC.
You don't need to watch it, so you could go through it. It's the same as me, right? I like the classic stuff. I separate it deliberately because...
Yeah, I did that too. For me, the classic era is Sylvester McCoy walking down that hill with Ace, and they're off, right? Off on another adventure. And that, for me, is a nice bookend.
The movie puts a wee bit of glitch in it for me, and it's only because Sylvester McCoy's written it right at the beginning. That's the only reason the movie... I think the movie's mediocre at best. It was what we got of Doctor Who at the time. However, because Sylvester McCoy's in that, that's the only reason I class that as classic.
I kind of class it on its own. It's
on its own.
New Who to me. It's
like watching Dad's Army movie compared to the Dad's Army TV show.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, for me, it's something that is standalone. It is, for me, kind of New Who. I get what you're saying about Sylvester, but he was in it for such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
It's almost sort of I can gloss over. I mean,
I can understand why you gloss over it because of this. Because of that.
Oh, nice. Yes.
Right. Basically, if you can accept those as non-canon because they're movies, then why would you need to accept anything else as canon? Because they're Doctor Who.
You can put the Doctor Who movies, the Dalek movies, in canon, and this is how.
I know how.
When Ian and Barbara came back, so when they came back, they sold their story, and it got made into a movie. And obviously Hollywood changed it to make it more Hollywood. So
yes,
of course,
and that's why he's a human with his two granddaughters.
Yeah,
because they couldn't have spacemen. Don't be silly. I knew that. I heard that theory, and I thought it worked quite well. And
that's brilliant.
You can imagine somebody writing a book about his trips, but they put it as a story to make it more palatable. I think
that would make a good Big Finish story, now whilst Ian is still with us,
William Russell.
To do that. Yeah, William Russell, exactly. Whilst he's still getting to do the reminiscing and how he sold the rights, and that'd be great.
See, that would actually work really well, and I think it's a whoever came up with that theory is a genius because it takes what you know and then just retwist, and there you go. It fits perfectly.
You go, oh yeah.
I would never have thought that. That is it. See, once I've heard it, that is it. To me, that is it.
And they can see that's how you make canon.
Your canon, no matter what people are telling you is canon. That to me works because it fits into the storyline. It's the same as like they change things and they go backwards and forwards. Anything happens because it's a time travel thing. Things happen, but it's the same as like Pompeii, for instance, they went back to Pompeii and they didn't save anybody, but they decided to save one family.
Mm-hmm.
But that story never got out. Well, believe it or not, history happens. He could have saved them. They could have walked. They could have travelled just about to get in, and they could have got an accident. They got killed. You don't know. It's that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I look at it, when they go back in time and change something, people say, "Aye, but that would have been recorded in history." Well, it's history. A set amount of people knew it, so if it wasn't widely spread, that everybody knew it, or it just got forgotten throughout time. So when these silly things they put in, like the Mad Monk one, the meddling monk, right, about how he was trying to destroy the ships. It wasn't just the doctor, it was going against him to try and stop him. There was other people that knew what his plan was and stuff like that. So they say, aye, but surely somebody would have known that he had this technology, this magician was going to destroy them. No, because it's the type of thing, it was forgotten.
Well, you know, if you look at the times in which that was set as well, you know, you're talking about a very superstitious bunch of people, so it could have become part of myth that got forgotten in time. Could be some sort of phasing of time, which, you know, the events may have just sort of phased out of people's memories because it was a time anomaly. So maybe that sort of gradually faded into myth or legend, and sort of gradually became just a bunch of stories people tell each other in the pub, you know, that kind of. Which, you know, you can work these things out, you know, and slapdash a retcon on that and just explain it away. That's not a problem. But again, canon is generally what is, I think, agreed upon rather than foisted.
It is, because you will look at Red Dwarf, perfect one for canon, because canon only matters when they wanted to, because they don't tell you what's canon, they don't tell you what to ignore, they just go ahead with it, and if you don't want to accept it, it's not a problem, but we're still telling a story. Like, for instance, them only having 169 crew initially, it goes up to thousands and within that, but they don't tell you, aye, but well, this happened to make sure there was more. No, it's just, well, you don't need to pay much attention, because at the time that's the only number they thought about. So that's why it's grown, because obviously it's a 5-mile vessel, so it had to be. So the fact is, Red Dwarf doesn't bother about canon. If they want to change something, they're quite happy, they'll do it. But they'll not actually turn around and say, you have to ignore canon now. They'll just go ahead and do it.
Again, you can explain it in a sciencey fiction-y kind of way, you know, or science fantasy kind of way, by going, well, you know, because of all the issues with time travel and dimensional things happening. I mean, it could have rewritten the history as it went along, you know, like you could say the same about Doctor Who with all those sort of anomalies in the canon. So, well, you know, timey-wimey, whatever, you know, so it's the ultimate get out clause.
I hate that expression.
I know, I hated it, but it does serve a purpose in saying, well, you can slapdash a retroactive retcon and just go, well, you can explain it away with a sentence, you know, but that happened, and because a bunch of weird shit happened, so weird shit happened.
But that's why
not ideal, but you know.
That's why I liked the Red Dwarf part, because they didn't even mention canon. They didn't talk about canon. It only ever came up as
canon only becomes canon. It only becomes canon after there's enough episodes under the belt. Because, like, the argument with that and with Classic Who is, well, it was still in development, and also back in those days, video media was a thing. So whilst they're developing canon, things get forgotten about. You get other writers come in who aren't fully aware of the entire history, so they will, you know, say something that will completely contradict something that's gone before. Because I didn't pay attention, they were busy focusing on entertaining a mass audience with the monster of the week and making it fun. So for me, how I see it is, and this is why I have a massive issue with the current New Who mob, especially Chibnall, is at least with the first two showrunners, they had a bit of, some reverence there. Moffat did a little bit of tinkering, but didn't fuck it up entirely. Chibnall comes along, and it's totally out the window. And you've got writers, Paul Cornell, and people like that saying, "Oh, canon needs to be kicked to the curb where it belongs," and all this kind of stuff. It's just completely disrespectful of better writers and better showrunners.
Well, that to me is
they're
effectively turning around and saying, "See, everybody that came before us, they're that bad. We have to destroy what they've done because it makes it hard for us." No. They're that good.
What I do is, in my head, is I go, well, you've got 1963 to 1989, or arguably 1990. Was it 5?
2004, was it not?
No, the movie, 2006. So you've got those. They were in development. The canon was being developed the whole period of time that it was in its original run. You've got that in isolation. You bring the show back. The last thing you should be thinking about doing is dipping right back into its history, back in the classic era, which is standalone, and then fuck with that. Fuck with the canon, with the Doctor, and all the rest of it. Why do that? Why do? Because at least fans of Doctor who don't like the current era can still have that untouched, right? No, they have to go back and ruin that as well for everyone. It's just like, why? Out of sheer spite is the only reason. And it's so mean spirited, really is. And I hope this stops, this postmodern crapping over everything that's gone before to teach the evil patriarchy a lesson or whatever it is, and move forward instead of looking backwards to screw everything up, just to teach us all a lesson.
I think that's another problem that Red Dwarf showed. That's a load of rubbish. Red Dwarf, as you said earlier on, 2 white guys, 2 black guys. How many times was Reese ever mentioned in it?
Nothing. Not a single
never once. They were just fantastic characters. Everybody loved them. They didn't turn around and say, "I only like those 2 because that's the white guy," or I only like her because she's a female. But no,
this is what the woke idiots of today don't understand.
And highly loved. Yeah.
And this is what the woke mob don't understand. You've got a bunch of 20-nothings going around going, everything's racist, everything's this. It's like, look, we grew up in the 80s and 90s, and it wasn't an issue. We saw representation on screen without even blinking. Nowadays, everything is about immutable characteristics, and it's like, well, it doesn't make a character. It doesn't make anything compelling or interesting. And you're making a big deal out of something which we, back in my day, took for granted anyway.
Yeah, they're effectively saying, don't judge somebody on their character, judge them on the colour of their skin.
Yeah.
No, I judge
or
people
what's between
on
their
their
legs,
character.
exactly. Yes.
The way I look at it is, it makes zero difference to me about anybody's. Everybody's an asshole when they want to be. Doesn't matter the colour of your skin, sex, preference, what's between your legs, whatever. Don't care. An asshole's an asshole. Just encompasses everybody.
Entertain me, monkey. I don't care who you are. You are a performing monkey. You will make me laugh. You will make me cry. Here's a bunch of symbols. I'm going to wind the key in the back of your neck, and you're going to perform. That's it. You're going to jump around, sing, whatever it is, and shut your fuck up. Just do what you're supposed to be doing, and entertain people.
It's the old adage. My mum used to say to me, like, when she would tell me to do something, I'm not doing that. She would turn around and say, "Dance, monkey, dance." Effectively, you do what I tell you because you don't want to. There's the door.
Yeah, and don't forget BBC. You're paid for by public purse. And if you're not fit for purpose and you don't listen to us, what other recourse have we got to do other than say, "Well, we're not paying you"?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm stuck with it. The programs my wife watches. We don't. There's very rare things that we watch together and enjoy. believe it or not, Death in Paradise.
I haven't watched a single BBC programme in 2 years.
I don't
Not a
watch
single
the
one.
BBC, but my wife does because the programmes she likes are on it. But that's the type of customer they should be looking for. If they've got programmes that certain people want to watch, get them to pay it. So basically, subscribe. So it's not going to affect me because I'm still going to be paying it because my wife likes a lot of the programmes that are on it. That's her. So I'm not going to turn around here, you're not watching it because I would be just as hypocritical. However, I would prefer them having a subscription module where they have to make programs and because they have to get the payments for them. It's not going to affect me because I'm still going to pay it.
No, it's this condescending sanctimony of the BBC, this Auntie Bede mentality, which is pervade throughout its many years, but lately it's become so utterly contrived and ultimately very corrupted by this insatiable desire to educate the poor masses with their middle class postmodern drivel, because we need to be educated because we're either A, stupid, or B, bigots, and need to see the light. And I think I don't think that, I know that they've gone above and beyond their remit, and they have no right to think that they are educating us. What they're doing is not only pandering, but they are using it as a platform to brainwash people into, and they use demoralizing tactics. You know, they take something like Doctor Who and they change it out of all recognition to demoralize the audience into acquiescence and submission. And the fact that they gaslight the fans, they gaslight us and tell us that we're evil and bad people for not listening to them. It's just like, no, listen, you're using messages like racism is bad, which we all agree with, but with that is attached a whole ideology. Yeah, exactly. That's what they rely on. They rely on people to accept the message because the message itself is correct. But with that comes baggage, which if you don't agree with the baggage, then you're against the message, which is, you see how I mean, it's so manipulative. And I just want to go back, you know, that's why watching Red Dwarf now is so, it's a catharsis, because it's so everything that they claim to be about, but without any of that messaging, and it's just pure entertainment. And that's what I want. This is equality in action. This is fun. It's entertaining, and it's not preaching at me.
Yeah,
and that's it. That's all we.
Big difference. You look at even some of the old stuff, like Love Thy Neighbour. It's got Rudolph Williams. Right? The reason I think about that, because I've got Love Thy Neighbour. I love it. It was everybody who says that was racist. No, because you're just looking at the clips where he's using derogatory racist terms.
But we were laughing at him.
But the problem was, Bill. There was Bill and Eddie. I think Eddie was the right guy. He was the least educated. Bill was the higher educated, more successful person. So he had the supervisor job, and that's what was the design. It was nothing to do with his colour. It was to do with his class. It was.
What's the same with Rising Damp? You had a black character in that who was very well educated, and you had Leonard Rossiter, who was this mealy-mouthed, sneering character, sort of envious and toadying and all the rest. And then you had also Alf Garnett, you know, To Death Us Depart and all this. And that character can never be shown on the BBC again because it's deemed racist. But the joke was on the character.
Well,
the joke was on. You know, that's the nuance that is lost by this very black and white divisive culture.
Because the object of those characters wasn't to put a message across. The object of those characters were to laugh at them.
Yeah,
Because
and the guy who played
you know how you defeat hate? Laughter.
Exactly, and that's exactly what Alf Garnett was about laughing.
You were to
And
laugh at his stupidness because
he was asked. He was asked. You know, someone said, "Oh yeah, Alf Garnett, yeah, sticking it to the whatever, or a racial slur," and he just said, it's people like you, that I did it. I did it to show how ridiculous you are. It was laughing at you, and he just absolutely admonished this clear racist who thought wrongly that the character was celebrating his ideological idiocy, but it was actually a parody of that,
of those
a caricature.
And it's the same
he
as
took great
you
delight in
had.
explaining it to the idiot,
But that's the thing, they just hear one thing, he said racist things, so that was a racist program. No, he was saying racist things and you were to laugh at him to show how ridiculous these people are. And that's what you should be doing. If you turn around and tell people you need to think this way, people are going to go, no matter how well intended you are, if people are getting told to do things, they're going to go,
exactly.
No, I'm not getting told to do it. If you say, look, isn't this type of person hilariously funny? Why don't we all laugh at them? They'll say, he is hilariously funny. And then if you hear somebody saying it, you think, an Alf Garnett, look at him.
What's funnier than watching some crazy bigot having a meltdown and laughing your head off at him, just absolutely being incredulous at everything? And that's what Alf Garnett represented to me. It was just watching him melt down all the time. It's the same sort of thing with Basil Fawlty and stuff like that. You just it's watching these insufferable people melt down.
Basil Fawlty was taking the mickey out of the type of person John Cleese had seen as a manager, and they just thought it was so ridiculous that somebody was so jumped up for a wee bed and breakfast hotel that they were so tyrannical, and that's what he was taking the mickey out of, that type of person. You didn't expect to go and live in if you found somebody who was a Basil Fawlty, you would have ran a mile. Yeah, I'm going to stay there. No, you're going to go and stay somewhere where the people are pleasant and nice. You don't want to go to somewhere that is a nasty piece of work. It's the same as Love Thy Neighbour. It's the same as Alf Garnett. There's so many people you were meant to laugh at. And if you
the joke's lost.
It's just lost, because you look at Fawlty Towers, there's one wee teeny bit the Colonel says that people are kicking up in arms. Fawlty Towers should be banned. If they were that bothered about it, take it out, because it actually doesn't add or subtract the story if that bit's still in it.
They took it out on they rebroadcast the Germans episode, and it had the Colonel saying something which and that was that scene was cut.
Yes, but do you know why that scene was in? It was to show how old-fashioned those ideas were. Because everybody at the time looked at it and went, really? He said that? And
I think
your granddad used to talk like that.
The main problem I think that they have with it is because the character isn't one-dimensional. If the character was one-dimensional, they will probably go, yeah, that's fine. But because you have empathy for the character in general, and when they do say, even Alf Garnett, you're laughing at him, but you also have that pathos, that thing where you also see his humanity, right? He's not a one-dimensional character.
Right, because he loves his family. He's not just a nasty person.
So he has virtues as well as, but that makes him a three-dimensional, real human being. They don't like that, because they don't want anyone having any empathy whatsoever with anyone that they deem the enemy. And for whatever virtuous reason, once you start dictating that you have to write that these characters are one-dimensional, it doesn't become entertaining. It becomes a political piece of propaganda. It's a caricature of a caricature. And it becomes so meaningless. You know, there's no, even the worst kinds of people, you will find humanity there, you know, and that nuance is a completely thrown out baby with the bathwater scenario, and we're left with a very hollowed out, very shallow culture, and it just feeds into that black and white narrative. And it focuses on this very sort of intense navel gazing, or genitalia gazing, or skin color gazing.
Yeah.
And it's not entertaining. It's not informative. It's a blanket statement, a dehumanizing statement, and one that removes even the worst aspects of humanity into such an alien concept that you can never relate to anything on a human level, however bad it may be. And I think that's a very big mistake, because once you start doing that, it's not a fucking, you know, stretch to imagine certain camps in which you concentrate in appearing again, you know, that kind of thing. And, you know, a few piled up bodies and mass graves, you know, that it's only a short hop and a skip and a jump before you get to that stage, when you managed to remove from media, mainstream media, humanity in all its flaws. And if you start demonizing to the point where it becomes so one-dimensional, you can easily just detract these people from humanity, and other than to the point that they're beyond salvation. And it's very easy once you got a demographic of modern society that is so easily demonized, there is a very, very short distance to go before, you know, bad things happen, you know.
And the problem is, it's the same as when they're trying to rewrite history. And the stupid thing is,
too busy rewriting it to actually read it in the first place.
to rewrite history, there is an adage there: those who don't study history are damned to repeat it.
Yeah.
And if they're saying, "Oh, that didn't happen. We want it changed so it happens this way." Then you're not learned what got us to where we are, because if you ignore all that, it's going to you're not going to notice it when it happens again.
An undercover trooper says, "Careful, that's the point Gina Carano tried to make." And yeah, she did, and that's why when she was demonized for pointing this out, she was cancelled. And when you start using cancel culture to silence critics, that's not a fair and just society. That is one which is tyrannical and off the hook and unchecked. And it's being engineered and run by people who are of the same peer group, who are in their early 20s, who don't fucking know anything. I certainly didn't know what I know now when I was 20. And I just imagine that if I had that kind of power when I was in my 20s, how damaging that could be.
Oh, God, you look at it as a history lesson, right? First World War, right? You had people who had particular jobs that were exempt from call-up. Then you had people who were injured, or people who were too young to be called up. And you also had people who were on leave. People would walk up to them and hand them a white feather.
Yeah.
So people the soldiers stopped coming home to their families or else they wore their uniform all the time. Or you get young kids, 16-year-old, signing up because people have been handing them a white feather. Or you get people who have got cancer and they've been told not to do this.
Or asthma.
Because people have been giving them a white feather. And you get people who had protected jobs, as in things that they needed to fight the war.
Yeah, you have people who weren't, you have people signing up to go into a war.
And that was peer pressure based on
and you had them signing up, and you had people who were unfit to fight signing up. I mean, my great-grandfather was 14 when he signed up for the army in the First World War. And he did it by stealing his older brother's papers. You know, and I don't know if it was peer pressured into it or what it was, but it was
a
off.
lot of people signed because people were
could die
handing
because
them
of that.
white feathers, because the government was effectively saying, if you don't sign up, you must be a coward. And it was getting spread out by the papers, the social media of the time, which means people were actually going up to people who looked older and handing them white feathers and saying, you're a coward because you're not fighting.
And the thing is that, you know, if you've got people unfit to fight, for whatever health reasons or age or whatever, could get the person next to you killed as well.
It was the fact that was the social media of the time, and it basically was
nothing's
people
changed.
to their death. Nothing's changed. Just the media is more in your face.
Yeah. Yeah,
but
it's not even the establishment media. It's a bunch of navel gazing 20-year-olds and teenagers who've been informed by their university professors how to think rather than to think critically.
Yeah,
and it's a cult. It really is a cult, because this unquestioning unthinking is like a shark. And
do you know what
Red
Dwarf? Do you know what Red Dwarf taught me about these type of people? See, when they were born, their parents murdered their paranoia and just let their confidence run riot.
Yes.
Basically,
so
they can do no wrong, no matter what they've done. It wasn't their fault. They did it perfectly. So they've got their confidence.
It's like breeding sociopaths, you know. It is a cultural sociopathy.
It is. It's basically, if you're telling people everything you do is perfect, and if somebody turns around to them and says, "Oh, by the way, you can't do that job," but my mommy said,
it really is.
It's exactly what it is. I mean, I brought all my kids up. If you don't do it, big deal. You can't do it. Believe it or not, I want to actually learn to play a musical instrument, because every person in my family can play a musical instrument. The only person in my family that couldn't was my mum, but she could sing. I can't hold a tune. See if tune was liquid, I couldn't hold a tune in a bucket of water. But I've always wanted to learn an instrument. Guess what? I've failed every time I tried. But I don't turn around to people and say, I'm fantastic, listen to this. Because I know I can't do it. Everything
I've learned since school, I mean, school was fucking useless for me, but everything I've learned, I've taught myself. Every fucking thing that I've ever dipped my toe into. I might not have mastered everything, but I've certainly found, you know, where my limitations are and where my expertise lies.
Yeah.
And it's not because I was told I couldn't do it. I was always kind of creative. I was always good at drawing and not much else. I was good at physics, even though I didn't realize it. And it's like knowing where your shortfalls are, but sort of, I mean, I think one of my problems was I was too creative to the point that I had no business acumen whatsoever. So it was always screwed with me, you know, and I never succeeded particularly in anything. But I still feel personally that I achieved whatever I sort of set my mind to that interested me. I could sort of at least be adequate to the point.
Interest. It's the same with me. See, I like all my geeky stuff. People can talk about most things geeky. If I've not got stuff to do with it or collections, I've probably watched it and I still remember bits and pieces about it, even if it's something I've probably not watched for years, because I'm interested in all that stuff. Same as the ancient alien theories, all this. I don't necessarily believe everything, because you can't, because there's so much contradictory out there. But the fact is, I'm interested to learn. I can't remember who it said was, do I believe you or don't believe you? It's not so much I don't believe in you aliens. It's not so much I believe in aliens. I'm willing to believe. Convince me.
Yeah, that's it. That's why I tend to think in the terms of I am a militant agnostic.
See,
I don't know.
But I'm married to a minister's daughter.
Well, there you are. And, you know, I was raised by a Protestant and a Catholic, you know, and my mother, I didn't meet till much later, is Jewish, you know. So, I mean, and I don't prescribe to an orthodoxy. I have my own personal beliefs that are based on my experiences and evidence that I see before me. And I tend to think to sort of move forward, you have to unlearn. So you shed off a lot of things that have been taught to you. So being taught and learning are two different things, right? One is external, one is internal. And for me, you have to unlearn what you've been taught to learn. And I think that's such an important lesson.
The best way to teach somebody is teach them how to teach themselves.
And to think for yourself and to question things. And I think that for Generation X particularly, we were squeezed between the boomers who had everything, had all the jobs, had all the houses, had all the free education, the free housing, the whatever, all that stuff. And then squeezed out between them and the millennials who then came along and were told they were special and had everything as well. So, and my generation were a lot less of us. But we also grew up in a time, I think, where sort of questioning things became the norm. You know, there's a huge increase in sort of conspiracy theories and all this kind of stuff that went on when I was growing up. And that's because we were generally raised to be quite suspicious and had to fight and struggle tooth and nail to get anything or anywhere. And it was a struggle. And I think that struggle is very an important key. I think boomers became quite complacent, and the millennials are militant with their sanctimony because they know everything and they know better than everyone because their mummy told them so. Whereas our lot was like, right, there's the door, off you go. See you whenever you come back. If you're back before midnight, maybe give us a call. You don't have to. I trust you. Off you go. Pop off.
Yeah,
you know.
That's the difference between the modern generation and my generation as well. The modern generation have been told by their parents what they are. My generation was told by my parents who they are. Not what they are, who they are. Like me, I've always, there's two people I want to make proud of, right? I want my mum to be proud of the man I am, and I want my dad to be proud of the man I can be. And that's the thing. It's because my mum and dad are the two people who instilled in me my worth. They didn't tell me I was the best at everything. I was the greatest at this, and I could do this, and I could do that. They encouraged me to do what I wanted. So I want my mum to be proud. Both my mum and dad have passed. My dad passed earlier this year. But even up until then, even now, I still want to be the man my mum would be proud of. I want to be
it's interesting because
my dad was.
My grandmother raised me. So I guess in a way I have that link to that generation. You know, she was a kid during the Blitz, so she encouraged me as well. I think because she came from a generation that had nothing, you know, and understood what nothing actually meant. And
my dad was 6, I think, when the war started, Second World War started. So
my grandmother was born in
similar generation.
30. I think 30. Was it either 34, 36? I think it's 36.
My dad was a year older, 33. He was born. But do you not find it's a case of she instilled you with your self-worth? She didn't tell you what you are. She told you what you could be, who you want to be.
Yeah, very much so.
Telling you what you are. She told you who you are, not what you are, who you are.
And she encouraged me. Whatever she noticed that I was particularly good at, she would sort of guide me. Or like if I was showing signs of drawing and being good at drawing, she would go out of her way to provide me all the necessities, you know, the paper, the pencils, everything.
Techie drawing board and everything. My dad bought me all that stuff.
Brilliant, yeah.
I never went anywhere with it, but I still had it.
But it was instinctive. It was like second nature to her,
Yeah.
you know. I didn't need to ask. She would just provide, and she would just keep an eye and just know, you know, just. And I think, again, it does come from not having that chance, because, you know, coming from the great generation where everything is sort of very put upon young people to be adult and to be silent, and, you know, you will get what you're given and that's it. I think she spoiled my father. She certainly spoiled me, but I think the second time around with me, she you know, she'd learned a few tricks or two, you know. So yeah, it's funny how I got on better with her than I do with my father, you know. Oh, this is getting deep, isn't it?
I don't think so. But it goes to show that even a program, Red Dwarf, can actually make you think about the good times and what the good times are. Good time about a program, but also reminds you the good times of the people who encouraged your sense of humour, your enjoyment of what was not normal.
Yeah.
What is normal? There's not one person I would class as normal, because we're all different. So if you got one person who was normal, then everybody else is completely different. So they're all abnormal.
Well, there is in America an organization that investigates the paranormal, and there's a check for £1 million if anyone can prove paranormal things exist, right? And it's never been claimed. Well, conversely, on the other side, in America, where else, there was an organization set up for the investigation of the normal, and they have a check for $1 million to prove normal exists, and it's never been claimed either, which I find absolutely hilarious.
It's basically, if you... The fascists did it in 43. They tried to actually make the perfect Aryan. And who was in charge of the group? A wee short guy with glasses.
Yeah, the least Aryan-looking people ever.
Exactly, the least Aryan-looking people were the ones that were in charge of telling everybody what an Aryan should look like. So you had Himmler.
Never trust an architect. There you go.
That's the thing. You had Himmler telling everybody that you can't be German because I want the 6 foot, blue-eyed, blonde-haired, and you're sitting there thinking, if you look in the mirror.
Yeah, I know.
So crazy, the fact that you get people who are telling you what you should look like, who don't even look like it themselves, but are telling you you don't look right because you don't.
And then you get these woke people on the extreme left who are in their 20s who don't see that in themselves. They are trying to create a utopia, as all these usual well-meaning fascists do, whether you like it or not. And it's funny. It's like you do realize you're going to have to live in this one. I've spoken to a few of these people on Twitter, especially with all this cancel stuff that's been going on in the Doctor Who community. And it strikes me that they operate so as one voice, like Cybermen, not because that they believe necessarily in the virtue of what they do, but because they're too scared to say anything counter to anything. They don't question anything openly. They might do it privately, but never openly amongst the peer group. And it's like they have to join in this sort of orgy of condemnation of everything, because if they're not seen to be doing it, then they are part of the problem. And this is where we get to final solutions, which is where I get scared, you know, because my family and my mother's side experienced that. Thank you very much. But, and if you're going to be an architect, you've got to be prepared to live in that house, as far as I'm concerned. And I don't think these people are. I think they're being swept along and controlled by peer pressure. Really, it's like we have peer pressure at school, but not like World Wide Web peer pressure, which is global. It's insane.
Aye. Because you've not just got the 3 or 4 people in school who think they know better than anybody else. You've got thousands and thousands of people doing that. And that's the part that's scary. You've not just got the 1 or 2 bullies you have to stand up to. you've got a continent worth of bullies to stand up to. So
exactly.
you can't avoid
I can't imagine that pressure on the younger generation now, having that kind of pressure on a daily basis. And bearing in mind that this is the first sort of generation really that's been raised online, like fully. I mean, our generation has straddled the analog and the digital and have seen life and society change before our eyes.
I remember my first uni job. I was using Cello with the browser. Cello came before Netscape 1, which came before Internet Explorer. So you're talking about it was all in no pictures. And if you wanted to download a picture, you got it one line at a time.
Oh, yes.
Oh, God. AOL was around and you had that as your email. But in effect, that's what I remember using. If I wanted to go to a forum, a fan site, it was text, just basic text that somebody had typed in, not uploaded a picture or a document they've got. They typed it in and it was live. So once it was gone, unless you had some very good system that could allow you to view it, you missed it because it just scrolled down and scrolled down and scrolled down. Eventually it disappeared. That's how old I am. I remember using these browsers from when I first started. I think I actually left uni doing computer sciences in 1994. So you're talking about the 90s, and this is what was still coming out. And I grew up learning to program and type word by line, not a click and drag and do this. It was just, and yet I still find that I've been doing it for 30 odd years. But even if, and I work in IT, and I'm still finding things out. What the hell is somebody who's just coming into it and just using their phone or for basic stuff? I do the back end bits of coding and stuff like that. No program for years, mind you, so I've not done that aspect of it. I used to program web pages.
It changes so fast now.
It changes so fast that it's scary. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad my mum never touched a computer in her life. My dad used to program computers.
Yeah, my grandmother, she was working in the civil service, and she, towards the end of her career, they forced her to learn, word processing and things like this. It was just like,
well, my dad.
They were trying to get rid of her at that point.
My dad taught himself how to do it, and he basically ended up teaching himself how to program computers. So he used to program computer games and stuff like that for fun for himself and for us. So my dad got into it because my dad was a very intelligent man, and when we first bought this book, computers, how to program, we thought we were great. Looked at it and thought, aye, right. And then my dad picked it up and learned. He taught himself electronics. He taught himself how to build electronic circuit board.
Very pragmatic generation,
exactly. He taught himself.
There's a problem, tackle it,
And he taught himself how to program. And he would come up to me and say, "Going to check this for me." Sorry, I might work in computers, but that's even higher stuff that I know how to do. And he's expecting me, because I'm younger and I work in the field, and yet I work in the field and there's other things. Yeah, I'm sitting there thinking, how the hell can you do that? Or how the hell can you not do that? Because it's either really simple, everybody's just forgot how to do it, or it's really complicated and you're expecting everybody to learn it. It's nuts. There's just too much out there for normies, I suppose. You're going to get specialists in everything, but normal people don't have a clue about half the stuff that's out there. You look at somebody's view of Twitter, and they say, it's just for keeping in contact and keeping up to date with things. What about the cesspool aspect of it?
Yeah, and look at TikTok. There's another example. This phenomenon that happens to being designed by AI, Chinese Communist Party controlled AI, to manipulate young minds, to do things and to act in certain ways to control their behavior.
Yeah.
And that's indisputable. I mean, there's no two ways about it. It's social control through algorithms and AI. And if you think back to, my earliest memories, rag and bone man, and, you could hear the whistle go for the factory workers to trot off to work, and they'd all mass off in like this zombie uniformity off to work. And the most difficult things really were sort of, car mechanics and things like that, machinery. And now, you can't imagine anyone being able to just, I need a phone, I'll just make one. You
look at a car mechanic nowadays, they have to have a computer degree, a lot of them, because of the amount of computer circuitry built into a car. Car doesn't need all that, but it's all added in. So people now...
Yeah, but they put it in as health and safety, and they're very crafty in how they sort of backdoor things into all these things, under the guise of being one thing when it has a multitude of other applications as well. So, I mean, it's really very, it's bizarre, isn't it? I mean, it is science fiction evolving before our eyes.
They always said the best health and safety feature you can put in a car is a spike on the steering wheel pointing at the driver. Because people feel indestructible in cars because they've got airbags,
too comfortable,
side impact, this and all this, and it can do 90 mile an hour in a 30 minute. But if you put a big spike, people will be staring at that going, if I even bump into a pigeon, I'm getting it. So they're going to drive very, very safely. They're going to drive at a decent speed. And you're sitting there thinking, if you wanted to cut down accidents, put a big spike in. Health and safety propaganda. Pound a penny, all those crashes stop. A pound a penny, all that speeding stops.
God,
but you've made something so safe that people actually do more damage.
Well, now they're going to make it so that you don't even have to drive the bloody thing anymore.
That's one thing I can honestly, if I live to be 1,000, I'll always have a car that I can drive, because I don't trust. If I'm driving with somebody I think it's a bad driver, I'll still sit in it. Because
what if you pissed off someone proficient in hacking, right? And they just thought, well, I'll just hack into that person's car and I'll make them drive off a cliff. I mean, really? I mean, if you want to bump someone off, what better way to do it than, hacking into a car and just, making it do what you want it to do?
Well, and that's the scary thing, because
I think if you're going to have this issue with hacking, educate your entire population the skills of hacking. So then you've got the perfect national defense. If every school child in Britain was taught hacking, then you've created a national firewall that nobody could penetrate. Imagine that. And then if everyone could hack everyone else, I mean, right there, you've got to pay to a lot of things.
But the thing is, if you know how to hack, you know how to prevent it. Simple as that.
That's it.
You need to reintroduce Darwinism into parenting. Give them back knives, glass bottles, and suicidal bikes, and let the dumbest die.
Yes, I mean, remember like all those those playground rides, like the cone thing that would sit on a pole and it would swing around like 90 miles an hour. And
it was called the wigwam, and it just spun round.
Yeah. That was got rid of. C-stores got rid of all the roundabout.
The wee bikes. It's on a spring.
And it was all concrete, or not even asphalt or grass. The fuck all concrete.
You basically went down in it, and you went down. It was the same as playing football. You never had grass pitches. You had red ash pitches. You slid tackled in there. You knew it for the next 4 months. because you had a gravel burn all the way down your leg from your arse right down to your ankle. And you guess what? You never did that again. You didn't try and hack somebody because you knew it was going to happen to you. But
well, you look at lionesses with their cubs. You know, the cub goes off and wanders off and puts itself into danger. The lioness doesn't tell it to go and sit in the corner on the naughty step. It gives it a nip, short, sharp shot, and it doesn't do it again. And that's been removed. And the state has got more power, more control. The child has more control than the parent. It's weird, you know. I think it's counterintuitive, counterproductive.
Yeah,
you know, I was given a smack if you're badly behaved, and you tended not to do it again, you know. But these kids now just
I learned quickly.
Do that, and you'll be in the courts, you know, and they're off the hook, thinking they're big I am and know everything, teaching us oldies what reality is. And it's like, well, you haven't even lived for 5 fucking minutes. What are you telling me for? I don't know.
But that's it's just it's scary. Can I ask one thing? I'll go back to Red Dwarf for one reason. I only want one thing, because I just got a notification that it's nearly 3 hours.
Yeah.
But that's a different story. A question you might have picked up, and it was something that I wanted. I listened to it 3 times to try and pick it up, and I'm not entirely sure I picked it up. See the bit where in Shoots Your Echoes, where Rimmer's going doing the jogging, and he stops by, and there's Lister, and he says, "You look as if you're in hippie heaven, you pregnant baboon-bellied space chimp." But did the laugh track cut half of that off? I don't even know if he says baboon-bellied space chimp or what he said.
That's interesting.
It's something I noticed, that the laugh track, because it was filmed in the front of an audience, they didn't even try and redo it. You lost parts of it, because even the fact is, you look like in your hippie heaven, you're pregnant, baboon bellied, and people started laughing, and it basically cut off the last of it. But I don't know what they said, and that's the problem.
I didn't notice that. I don't know why I didn't notice that.
It's fairly straightforward, and he calls him a baboon bellied.
I remember that, but I don't remember it being cut off.
It's just the laughing over the top of it. I missed the last. And I think he said, "You baboon-bellied space chimp," but the laugh over the top of it.
Was it baboon-faced? What was it again?
"You baboon-bellied space chimp."
Bellied space chimp.
It says, "You're in hippie heaven, you baboon-bellied space chimp. You're pregnant baboon-bellied space chimp."
Let's have a look. Okay. Bear with. Right, it says here we go. It's "How's life in hippie heaven, you pregnant baboon-bellied space beatnik."
Beatnik. But listen to this, right? See if you can pick this up. Right?
That's a bucket. Sorry. Morning, mister. How's life in hippie heaven, you pregnant baboon-bellied space?
You hear it?
Yes. Yeah,
the laughter literally cut off the last part, and I did not know what he said.
Now you do.
And now I do. Beatnik, it's just obviously, to me, because of the laughter, it just sounds as if he said space, and I just assumed he said space chimp because he used baboon.
Yes, that makes sense.
It's just one of those things. I've actually got it in front of me, because I've got a list of things.
I know that could never happen. That could never happen from a white character saying that to a black character, because all the pseudo racists out there who equate the that imagery to a black person are the only people who seem to think in terms like that, because we've seen this happen so many times now.
Yeah.
And it's like, who on earth in their right mind thinks that way? And it has to be a racist.
That was a white guy saying it to a black guy, and guess what? It was a joke. It was funny because he was a slob, nothing to do with anything else.
Exactly, but these people today would infer from that, and I think that says more about them than it does about anything else. I just think it's such a shame that people have just completely lost their sense of humor. It's almost like they're scared to laugh because they don't want to be seen to be laughing at the wrong thing, so they're constantly guarded. Well, there's no way to live. There's no way to live.
It's not. It's
a joyless world. That is a joyless world they want to create.
Undercover Trooper says, is it true Scotland is trying to make it illegal to say something that upsets someone seriously in Scotland? The answer is yes. The hate crime bill. In effect, I could say something to my wife, and if there was maybe kids were in, and they told their teacher that I had said something, and that teacher gets offended on behalf of someone else, I can get charged. That is
Stasi level shit right there. Yeah. That is fascism, 100%.
I mean, it is absolutely nuts because my mother-in-law and father-in-law. My father-in-law's an ex-minister. He's basically retired. You imagine they're just talking Bible verses, and somebody overhears them. They might not be offended, but they could be offended on behalf of somebody else.
Well, so that preacher in the street in Uxbridge got arrested.
Yeah, because one person complained.
For hate crime. It's like...
because he said something that upset them. I think
I'm a gay bloke.
The Bible definition of marriage.
Yeah, I'm a gay bloke. And even if he was reading the verses from Leviticus, right? I would not make it my business to tell him what he can think about me or anything. I don't care. I think this whole thing about taking offense just to teach, I think it's vindictive, right? It's just to turn it around and go, well, I can screw you over. And this is why I'm totally against protected groups status. I think it's nonsense. I think what happened to him was outrageous. A hate crime, seriously. He was reading from the bloody Bible.
Because somebody was upset because he said something. The way I used to do it, I remember somebody years ago.
I used to argue with them, you know. That was it.
I remember somebody asked me. I don't know why they asked me. Must have just looked like basically a right bastard. But they basically asked me, "Do you think gay men and gay women should be able to get married?" I says, aye, they should be able to be as unhappy as the fucking rest of us.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that somebody asks it, I find more, why did they ask me? Yeah, I look the type of person that would do me. My daughter came out years ago. She came out to me because she wouldn't go out to her mother because she thought her mother would be angry. One of the girls I used to go out with, she came out to me that she actually preferred women than me. I says, that's okay, so they are. So. But it's the same idea. One of my daughter's best pals was gay, and he was, as far as he used to laugh, he says he was my fourth daughter. But he basically was up at my house as often as he was in his own house. And I'm sitting there thinking, why does it make a zero bit of difference? Because if somebody, my mother-in-law and father-in-law, I don't know if they agree or not because they're very religious. But because guess what? They don't see it as their business. If people who are in maybe their church are want to, then they'll say, but the Bible says this. But they wouldn't say to somebody, you're not allowed to because we don't agree with it. They would just...
That's bigotry. That is bigotry. And the thing is as well, is this whole identity politics thing is attempting to make every immutable characteristic everyone else's business. And if you don't agree, you're a bigot. It's like, well, no one fucking asked, right? No one asked for this. No one wanted this. No one was. I'm not interested in this. I'm not playing this game. It's not. Yes, it's nobody's business but my own. But why are they so absolutely adamant in making it everybody's bloody business when mostly people just want to be left alone and to live and let live?
And the
Right?
thing
But
is,
it's destructive. It's destructive because it incites people to be resentful then on both sides, because you're creating a non-issue from an issue that has long since been sort of, yeah, okay, whatever. Who cares?
and it's the
We've got
name calling
that.
aspect of it as well, because they think if they name call you, you're so ashamed, or other people will be ashamed.
They're just devaluing it. They're devaluing
they are, because our group, Dungeons and Dragons, we used to play Dungeons and Dragons, and as far as I'm concerned, it's the best group in the world. I don't care what other dungeon masters say. But a couple in there where are gay. They're a couple. They're just a couple. They're there. And I was speaking to them, and I says, "Oh, by the way, you two have not to talk to me." And they said, "Why?" I says, "Because accordingly, I'm a homophobe." And they says, "Who told you that?" I says, "Somebody down there, because I disagreed with them on something. So I was an Islamophobe, homophobe. So I just thought I'd tell you, you're sitting playing with me."
I've been called a homophobe.
I know. I've heard.
A rabbi from another planet was accused.
He's been called a Nazi. I know.
Not only was he called it, he was also said to incite white supremacists. So, like, he's the Jewish Jew on the planet, right? And you're telling me this?
Absolutely.
These people are off the hook. Off the hook.
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of my friends. We used to go to the pubs and things, but we were all in a restaurant, and Paul is black, right? And it's not something people would laugh at now. But there was about 10 of us round the table, and the lassie came up, and she wasn't looking. She was just basically holding the two coffees, and she came up and says, "Who's black?" And Paul went, "Me." And everybody round that table was pissed herself laughing, and she just, her eyes went wide, but because she realised we were all laughing, she just smiled and says, "Thank Christ for that." And I mean, but you imagine now if somebody said that and he made a joke of it. You imagine what would have happened to the waitress.
Yeah, exactly. And he wouldn't necessarily have been the one to complain. It could have been just anyone around
somebody else in the restaurant who would have complained.
Yeah. And that is snitch culture as well.
Yeah.
It's nasty.
It's nasty.
And it's disingenuous. That's the thing. No one is genuinely hurt. Listen, if offence isn't offered, it shouldn't just be magicked up and conjured up into existence.
Exactly.
And I think so many people are aware of the power that they've suddenly got, and they're abusing that power. That's why I'm 100% against protected groups of people, because listen, groups don't exist. They are a grammatical fiction. Only individuals exist, and that is something we have seriously lost. It's something that Martin Luther King intrinsically understood, and that was in the 1960s. He got killed for that.
Judge me by the contents of my character, not the colour of my skin.
Yeah, and that goes to every other immutable characteristic as well. And it's so lost. And it's like these professional offence takers. It's like it's a choice to take offence. It's a choice. You can choose to rise above it. You can choose to see it for what it is, which might not be as bad as you are told it is, and to be responsible with that information and to make a decision. Obviously, if it's if it's aggrieved, like if it's intentionally harmful, sure. But if
people will say things knowing you can hear it because
it's like if you misgendered someone by accident. I mean, it's like suddenly it's the world's worst crime. It's up there with murder. It's like you dead name someone. Oh my God! It's like the ultimate crime. It's just like it's really not. You grow up.
Maybe I look at it as, sorry, if I know your name, I'm not going to call you by a pronoun. If I don't know your name, I'll do the same as I do everything. Excuse me.
If they ask me to and I like them, of course I will honour that. You know, if they're an arsehole to me from the word go, fuck yeah, I'll call you what the fuck I want to. And you'll live with it. You know,
you're not
I
doing
have to
it
deal with you
because
being an
they
arsehole.
demand it. You're not doing it because they demand it. You're doing it because you got on well with them. You don't want to upset them.
It's mutual respect. If you have that respect, look, as we all know, as people of a certain age, respect is earned. It's not a guarantee. It's not set in stone.
Yeah.
And if someone treats me with respect, I will treat them equally with respect. If they try to turn me into an enemy, I can be a right bastard. And I don't see any problem with that. Like, you know, I will offer them whatever they ask as long as they treat me with the same level. They can't demand it. Once you start, you don't win allies by coercion, force, fear, intimidation, and violence. You don't. The minute you start doing that, newsflash, you're not the good guys.
No,
that's it.
It's the same idea. Like, see if somebody tells me I need to do something.
Yeah.
Puts my back up. And my mum was the oldest of 7. My dad was the oldest of 7. My dad used to say my mum was the most stubborn person he had ever met. My mum used to say, I make her look as if I'm an easygoing person. So, 2 big families, and my mum was classed as the most stubborn person they'd ever knew until I was born.
I think the older you are, the older you get, the less seriously you take things, but also at the same time, the less likely you are to be told. And
I've probably been like that since I've been a kid. My mum used to always
I've always been
willful.
I've always been willful. I've always been stubborn. And again, I have a problem with authority, especially when it comes from a non-authoritative source.
Yeah.
And they have put themselves in the class above everyone else in their own, dictating to everyone else from an authoritative stance. And I'm sorry, that doesn't work with me. You can coerce me, cajole me, fearmonger me, patronize me, mock me, gaslight me, threaten violence against me, call me names, whatever you want to do. It's not going to change me. You're not going to change me for the better, and you're not going to put me in a concentration camp either. So get that out of your heads. So all I can say is, you know, good luck with your new world order, but you're not going to win friends by doing it. You know, you're going to create a world where people are going to be there, like kind of the stragglers in the party who know the party's over. It's not fun anymore, but they can't leave and they're stuck there. And I just don't really think that's the kind of party I want to enter.
And once you get into that new world order, see all those people you stood on the way up, they're going to be sitting there waiting just so they can go, him.
Yeah. And don't forget also, I mean, if you look through history, remember history, folks, Stalin had the group of people that helped him get to where he got to, and what did he do with them?
Yeah,
he had them all executed.
He actually got them out of the picture, literally out of the picture.
Airbrushed them out of the photographs when he had them bumped off. You know, and this is something these idiots don't seem to understand. That's the kind of world that they want to create. They think socialism, communism is the answer. Good luck with that. I'm not joining. You can kill me. You can do that. You can destroy my body utterly, but you're not going to have my mind.
Yeah.
And that's sovereignty. And that's mine. You can't have that.
It's crazy. It's just absolute nuts the way the world's going just now. It's Daniel. I've always been. He's always called sexist despite having Charlotte on his channel. But Daniel, they basically go after you just because when you're on anybody's channel, they say it's tokenism because you've got a disability. And that's them projecting.
And then I'll say as well, the old, my best friend is black, or my best friend is a girl, or my best friend is a gay argument. And it's like, you can't win.
You can't win.
Or reason with these people. It doesn't matter if you've got a disability. It doesn't matter if you're black. It doesn't matter if you're gay. It doesn't matter if you're trans. If you don't agree with the politics, then all that diversity, all that inclusion they talk about, out the window. You know,
Aye.
you're depersoned just as much as the much vilified straight white male.
Yeah.
You're in the same camp as
It's
them.
the same as if anybody, which I have been asked in the past, believe it or not, how many gay pals have you got, or how many black pals have you got? The answer to that is I couldn't tell you.
As many as I'm friends with, you know, I'm friends with people first.
So the first thing is I don't go, right, he's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, I'll need to remember that number for the next time somebody asks me.
The first friends I made when I moved where I currently live was a Jewish girl and the black guy who worked in the shop. And you know, they were the ones that I talked to the most. You know,
I grew up. I know it sounds silly. I grew up around gay men because my dad's younger brother was gay, and he was always round at our house, and so was his pals. We grew up around it, and there were just guys that came round. Big deal. And it was a case of people say, "Oh, didn't you notice?" Aye, but believe it or not, they used to come and visit like my other uncles. Yeah, you know what I mean? So if my other uncle brought in 4 lasses, I didn't think, oh, they must be straight then. I didn't. They were my uncles and his pals. Big deal. I grew up around it. I don't care.
And this is the thing, they sacrifice the important things like character, personality for social groups based on immutable characteristics. That's terrible. That's no wonder that none of them got any personality, charisma, or character. It's because they've sacrificed it to fit in and conform with whatever immutable characteristic that they have, or indeed characteristics that they've dreamt up that week. You know, and it's just to make themselves feel different and important at the same time, whilst actually neglecting the very thing that makes them important and individual, which is, you know, the content of their character.
Exactly.
It's
everybody
so
should be judged on. And that's what truthfully, I judge people on it. I don't care what people turn around and say, aye, but you shouldn't be listening to him because he's... I don't listen to him because he or she is this or that. I don't care. If you give me a good argument, I don't care. I don't care if you're a purple alien with yellow polka dots. It makes zero difference. Because as long as I either agree or disagree with you, it makes no difference. Because if you say, you need to watch this, well, what else have you recommended? Let me think. You recommended that, and that was good. Aye, well, I'll listen to it. Or, I didn't like what you recommended last time, so I'm not going to listen to it. I don't automatically think I'm listening to it because it came from X type of person.
Yeah. No, I mean it's silly, and it's what my grandmother used to say to me, and it rings in my ears to this day. Those who talk loudest have nothing to say.
The least to say, yeah.
And that for me is very much how Twitter seems to operate. And the more they demonstrate, and the more that they moan and complain, the more that they get angry, and the bigger the caps lock set in, the more you think, well, why should I listen to someone who's clearly unhinged at this point? You know, I mean, I will sometimes mistakenly use caps to emphasize a word because there's no italics, but you know, it's that miscommunication. And I think how much of this is just miscommunication, that people just, you know, when you're limited by a certain amount of characters and you're talking in this kind of contrived setting, it's just bollocks. It's just, I don't how people take it so seriously.
If somebody says something and you have to respond to it, and you're limited to the amount of characters, that's effectively they're saying, I can say what I want, and you're limited to what you can tell me back.
Yeah, because to give a nuanced response to a very contrived, trite, glib sentence, you know, because everything that they say is pretty much a sentence or a paragraph which has been handed to them. It's been crafted and contrived to be a soundbite, really, isn't it? It's all sound bites. But when you're trying to answer a nuanced answer to a soundbite with reason and logic, it requires a lot more than 200 whatever it is characters. You know, it's frustrating, and I think the key to how they have gained this upper hand is through demoralization. They demoralize people into acquiescence and submission through simply pounding them with this rhetoric, which is unnuanced. It's basic. It's ill thought out, ill conceived, and it's irritating because it's so shallow and so, what's the word? I said my brain's gone, but it's so it's one-dimensional. You know, it really is. And it's irritating because it's so infantile, and you're trying to argue with ostensibly kids, right? Who are spoilt and don't know what the word "no" means.
Yeah.
And when you start trying to apply reason and logic, that's a construct of the white patriarchy, using reason and logic. I mean, how can you fucking win an argument with these people when they've demonized the very thing that, you know, you can easily prove them wrong? It's just, this, like, you're losing a battle with people who are too stupid to realize that they've lost.
Well, and that's the problem. People who are too stupid. It's the same as, like I've said to Daniel as well when I was on the channel. See, if somebody goes off on one in me, my parents gave me enough self-worth that I don't care. The way I look at it is, you're going off on me, at least you're leaving somebody else alone.
See, with me, it's like, right, you little shit, I'm going to teach you a fucking lesson. And I won't let it go. I'm like a pit bull.
But see, because I'm dead stubborn. I just sit back, well, they're going on and on and on and on. And I sit and think, what would be the best thing to actually really piss them off? And usually it is, thank you very much.
Kill them with
it's
kindness.
Amazing how many people you piss off by saying, thank you very much, that was really good. When they go on a diatribe. Because they think, I didn't get my point across. He was
I think the most important thing when dealing with these people is to have fun with it.
And
it really makes me laugh when they think that they've got one over you, that they've upset you because you've answered them in a particular way. They actually think that they've got under your skin when in fact you're just going, no, look, I'm just proving you're stupid.
Here's a really good one for you. I used to do it. I don't do it as much now because I'm not as good. See, when you're getting the diatribe and you're doing that and they're doing things, saying things that are deliberately trying to upset you, start giving it that as if you're crying. And then just when they just see and you go, oh, sorry, I couldn't keep a straight face there. It's because they think the whole time you've been laughing at them and they hate it. But they think it's better because if you get it right, it makes it look as if you're crying. And they think they're winning. And then when they realise that crying is because you're trying to hold that laugh in. It's amazing how many people that gets. I used to do it all the time, but I basically...
But not in a tweet necessarily.
It's
crying emojis.
That's why the wee meme with the guy going...
Yeah.
I like throwing that out every so often. If somebody just goes on, I just basically don't answer. I just throw that out, and it's just amazing how many black. You just throw that out.
I tend to avoid using GIFs or GIFs, depending on which one you prefer.
I just use the GIF just as because
I don't think because they do it all the time.
I just put a wee laughing guy, and
they do it all the time. They do it all the time, and I just think, yeah, that's it. You can't argue. That's why you have to rely on. That's why
I throw a GIF of a wee laughing guy back at them because I'm not going to argue. So
I think I'm just an argumentative sod, so I enjoy it too much.
I'm just a stubborn person. I'm the type of person is see if somebody says something to me and I put the GIF and then they go I would put the GIF and I could do that for 10 hours straight, just putting the same GIF because I'm stubborn. I would just keep doing it until they go, fuck you then. Because I'm stubborn enough that I could spend my whole time sitting in front of my computer doing that.
Yeah.
If I need to, I can go get my dinner, or else I'm going to have a cigarette, or else I can do my work. A wee GIF, there we go, and I can still do this GIF again, and it's literally I can spend days doing stuff.
Oh, the fun ones is
I'm so stubborn. I'm OCD with my stubbornness. Once I've got my mind up there, that's it.
We're both stubborn, but we exhibit it in a very different way. But I think it's another good fun one is to leave them hanging for a day. And then they think it's all over. They think it's all over. But that crafty buggers, because quite often than not, more often you'll find this, is you will destroy them logically, and then there'll be silence, and then like half an hour to an hour later they'll come back with what they class the zinger, right? And then you'll go to reply and they've already blocked you, which means that they've won because they've got the zinger in and they've won that, and then they block you because that's how fragile they are. They can't possibly win logically, so they just think, I was going to say some really sarcastic, really witty, that'll prove everything, and then I'll block them, and then they can't reply, and therefore I win. It's just so.
You know what it reminds me of?
Obvious.
You remember the ones where somebody will say something and they'll go, and then a half an hour later they'll say, I should have said that.
Yes, exactly.
And that's what they're doing. They've just had the time to go and think of that because they didn't have the brains power to actually think about it at the time. And you've seen it's a trope in a lot of comedy shows about, I could have said that, and it's basically an hour or 2 hours later, I should have said that, or else next time I see him, I'm going to actually have this ready to say, and that type of thing. It's a trope, but they now, because they're not face to face, they're hiding behind a keyboard. They basically have got that half an hour.
The thing is with me, the more engaged I get, the more blood seems to pump into my brain, and the quicker I am to come up with the off-the-cuff thing, and I destroy them so quickly, and they're like struggling to keep up with me.
And that is the thing. It's basically most of them you can tell they're dumb as two short planks, and it's for the simple fact is they don't know what to say. Somebody comes on and gives me a really good argument and reason why certain things should they think are correct. I'll say, I can understand why you think that.
Yeah. Oh, do you remember the time?
Uh-huh.
Do you remember the time, like, when you would have an argument with someone and then, like, the next day you were friends again? Oh, it's a lost art, isn't it, nowadays?
That's my family.
I think that's everyone's family.
No, but people used to say I had a really, really weird family because we would go for nights out. So there was big parties. And one of my friends, he just said, it's really weird. Your family's the weirdest thing I've seen. I says, how? She says, well, look at those two there. And there's two uncles. Do you want to go outside? 2 pints, please. And it's literally like that. They'd be right in each other's face. And then the last would say, anybody want a drink? They'd say, aye. 2 pints, you want a drink? Aye. And then they'd go back to it.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the night, they're still arguing. You come to me, I'll give you a lift in the way home, and that type of thing. And it's they say your family's weird. I says no, my family.
That's normal.
are not, they basically can have disagreements and arguments.
Yeah,
and enjoy each other's company.
And that's something we just don't see hardly. We do in our sort of age group, but on Twitter it's unforgiving, right? Once you fail the purity test, you are X-personed, right? You're depersoned, deplatformed, cancelled, the worst of the worst, bigot, super bigot, evil, whatever it is, and there's no coming back from it. There's no coming back from it. I just don't understand how self-righteous you have to be, how deluded you have to be in your argument, just your argument, that you cannot reconcile another point of view, even if you vehemently disagree, and then that you have to destroy the person as well as the argument. It's an all-sum game, and I don't think anyone learns any lessons from that. I think it's important when you have an argument to at least consider what you're listening to, and to argue from the point of view of at least some kind of understanding, or at least an understanding of the topic or whatever it is. And half the time nowadays, No one even knows what they're arguing about. And yet it's so destructive. It's so absolute. And that's the thing with this thing. I mean, postmodernism was supposed to be a rejection of absolutes, but it has become absolutist. And I think it's a bunch of students who were taught postmodernist thinking, critical thinking, well, not critical thinking, critical theory, which is the exact opposite. But they've lost the understanding that it's supposed to be subjective. So if something's subjective, how can it be so fucking absolute? Isn't that interesting? It's such a paradox to what it's supposed to be, to what it actually is in practice. A bit like communism, I suppose. Great idea on paper, not so much in reality.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Yeah. This is why, going back round, you should watch Red Dwarf.
Yes, because Red Dwarf teaches everybody they can get along no matter how much they dislike each other. You look at 4 characters with flaws who, in effect, either don't like one or all of the other characters, and guess what? They come together when they need to.
And the thing is, that as it goes along, as it trundles along, I think genuinely there is a genuine affection there.
I think initially the first season there was very little of that, but I think that works well for it because the first season threw them all together.
Yeah,
they had to learn to get along, and they throughout the seasons they become friends.
Yeah,
and so. That I think that's what it is. Whereas initially they were just people who were thrown together, and then they became to rely on each other.
Well, there's hope then, isn't there?
There is. You think about it. It's what they used to always say. Like, have you ever seen Generation Kill?
Oh, it doesn't ring familiar.
It's based on the first Iraqi war, and it's about a unit, right? So you had they used to class them as a whiskey tango, right? You had the colour guy, and the two of them used to go at each other all the time because I hate your people, and you see you do this and you do that. See if somebody stepped in the middle of the two of them would turn on them, and if anybody actually agreed with one of them about the other one, the two of them would turn on them because they stood side by side, back to back, fighting for each other, so they can say what they want to say to each other. So if anybody steps in and agrees with one, so if somebody agrees with the white guy about the black guy, both of them would turn on him. You've not got the right to say it because you don't know him. You've got no, and it's the same as if somebody agreed with the black guy about the white guy, the two of them would turn on him and say, you've not got the right to say it because you don't know him. I stood beside him to protect each other, and I know if I'm pinned down, he'll come running to help me. He knows if he's pinned down, I'll come running to help him. It doesn't matter if the two of us don't like each other's colours of our skins.
Yeah.
That doesn't matter because that is incidental. We use that because we can, because we know each other. It's the same as you can have a laugh and a joke with someone. But if you have a laugh and a joke with someone, somebody else takes offence to it.
Well, it's a bit like the John Barrowman thing, back in the day, Witches Johnson out and plopped it on someone's shoulder. I mean, first of all, you'd have to be pretty relaxed in their company to consider doing something like that. And we don't fully understand the context of their relationships.
Yeah.
And yet this austere, moralizing collective mind which seeks to be mortified on behalf of the perceived groups, i.e. women in this case.
That's the point. The people who didn't object to it yet, the people who think they should have objected on their behalf.
Yeah, exactly. So it's this absolute arrogance that they can act as arbiter of that reality at that time and to retroactively apply their modern day postmodern, post-Marxist ideology onto that situation and then decry and criminalize it. It's denying the the situation, the friendships of the time, the all that nuance, all that situation that created an environment that they felt comfortable, not threatened by. And this is lost on this generation, absolutely raised on an orgy of fear porn and angst and all these identity things and all these perceive how you should behave, and because I'm always talking about other people's behavior but never looking at their own.
Well, do you know, I'm waiting on the first one to happen. See, like the minister that was brought up, or he didn't get charged to get kept in the cells overnight, a 78-year-old man who was thingy, right? Somebody says that one person complained, right? So they complained because he was preaching the Bible's definition of marriage, right? So they classed that as a hate crime. So what happens the next time there's a gay pride and there's somebody standing there and a wee old woman says, see what he says, that offends me because I don't like that. And they go to turn around, but wait a minute, I can't be because, no, you've just actually opened the door because you said it to him. So now it can happen to you. Let's see how you act when it happens. And that's the aspect of it these people don't understand.
Yeah. How many times have Christians been berated openly and publicly by LGBT people? And that's not classed as a hate crime? So it's very cherry picked, and I really don't like this tier leveled justice that we've now got. You know, this kind of mob. It's very elitist.
Yes, and exactly it, because they pick their targets.
Yes,
it's
they do.
Typical school bully.
That's what they do with the gay cake with the Christians, isn't it?
They pick the weakest target because doesn't matter what group, right? LGBT, if they went after a Christian man or woman, doesn't matter who, and they do that, right? Okay, you're so brave and you're not a bully. Go over and do it in Iran. Go over and do it there. Go and do it there. Let's see how brave you are by getting a Muslim preacher arrested for doing exactly the same thing. Let's see how you are going over to a country like China that you think is great and see how they treat. And that's the thing. You can tell they're bullies because they pick the soft target. It's the same as like they did a picture, anybody did a picture of Jesus and whatever. People go, funny. But if there's the even idea of pictures of any other, people are up in arms. Why? Because it's the same. You can't pick the easy target because you're allowed to get away with it.
Yeah.
Try doing it with try doing it with the hard targets. If you can do it with the hard targets, I'm standing right behind you.
Because you see what happens to them.
You actually believe in that and you're willing to die for your beliefs.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the thing.
They wouldn't.
And exactly because bullies never go for the hard targets, they go for the easy targets because they know they're not going to get any blowback and everybody's going to be behind them going, yay! Because what to actually be classed as anything else. And that's the thing, to me, that's the part.
It's spite.
It basically shows how weak they are because they go for the weak target. They're the type they're the hyenas of the animal kingdom. If somebody was actually standing there attacking the head of a herd and trying to bring it down, then you can understand that is a big beast of a lion or a big beast of this or the thing. But
they always go for the weakest, don't they?
You're actually, they always try and separate the weakest. So they basically use the brains, but they're no ones that actually go, right, he's brought that down, let's go and try and steal it off him now. Right. So the 50 of us will go up to him and steal all these bits of food because he actually had the guts to go and do it.
Yeah.
So we'll steal the thing, and that's what the aspect
is. It's a wake It's funny, isn't it? That it's called woke culture because really they operate in the wake of other people.
Yeah, they basically look for a something to chase, so they can actually go, "Whoo, look at me."
Well, it's all part of the demonization process, you know. And this is, you know, postmodernism makes such an emphasis on changing the meaning of words, and to use words in a way that dehumanizes people and segregates people, and it's oh god, you know, it is a bully culture. It's nothing short of tyranny, and we are allowing ourselves to be under control of people who have no life experience, who take themselves way too seriously, and who are easy enough to demonize everyone else and to mock everyone else and gaslight. I mean, that is narcissism 101. And you know, you used to think narcissism was something that someone was either brought up with or became through various, you know, mental health problems or whatever it is, and now it's exploded. It's like an online curse that so many people can seem to overnight become narcissists, or they go to university, pick up these ideas, and en masse become narcissists. That's very, very strange. I mean, it is something that strikes as something very familiar to what happened in, you know, revolutionary France, revolutionary China, the 1930s in Germany, and we're seeing it now. And people are demonized for pointing it out.
It happened in Africa, the Khmer Rouge.
Yeah.
The same thing happens all over the world. Doesn't matter who's involved, there's always somebody at the bottom.
And they all think they are morally just in doing it. And that's the thing, it's that belief.
Yeah.
That self-righteousness.
Yeah, it's that self-righteousness.
The biggest downfall.
What I think is important, what you think is wrong.
Yeah.
And it's basically, who told you it's important? My mammy told me.
Yeah. Or in this case, now it's the state or the corporations.
Aye. At one point, you used to say a big boy did it and ran away. Now, Big Brother does it and we agree.
Yeah. And they think that, you know, it's funny that I mean, Mr. Trilby, Mr. TARDIS said that his generation are not prone to conspiracy theories like the older generations. And I'm thinking, yeah, but you're the one who keeps saying that, you know, white supremacists live under your beds, you know, and Nazis are everywhere, and everyone's racist and everyone's this. Yeah, it's like, we're the conspiracy theorists. You're living in crazy cloud cuckoo land where everyone who disagrees with you is like literally, which is the word they use most often, the devil, you know, in pretty much, you know, it is in a way the new Inquisition, isn't it? They've replaced God with this ideology, and they are the Puritans.
Yep.
And you've got to pass the purity test, which none of them can do, but they all fear each other into it. You know, it's man. Anyway, we should probably
yes,
wind up. My throat's about to. But it's been absolutely brilliant. And I know we veered off the topic somewhat, but
just somewhat, and we apologise for all you dwarfers out there, but interesting, and it was all led by my confidence and paranoia.
There. To take from an episode.
Definitely. So
very, very good.
Problem, have you got what you up to next? Whose channel?
What day is it? Wednesday, Thursday. So next time I'm going to be on with Daniel in the chat, with Captain Copley Spock.
Oh, good. That's like tomorrow, because I've got
discussing that Blade Runner. There you go.
I've got it dug out ready for tomorrow.
Excellent.
So I'm going to be watching that first thing in the morning while I'm working.
Brilliant. So yeah, we're going to pose the question to Daniel and Charlotte if she's watched it. I don't know. Daniel's been on her case. I've been on his case. Kat's been on my case.
Send him a copy out. Send him a copy out. So.
Well, yeah. Anyway, that's going to be the topic of discussion. I'll probably be back on the TARDIS zone on Friday for Tiger Zone Talks. I assume that's happening on Friday. And Saturday for the classic Who Watch Along on the TARDIS Zone as well. And if there's anything else that happens, just follow me on Twitter and you'll find all the latest updates from the problem being himself.
Free Saturday night. Depends what he's watching in the classic.
Oh God, where we're at? I think it's Battlefield.
Oh,
so we're on the Seventh Doctor.
Yes, Battlefield, Sylvester and Lethbridge Stewart, Morgaine. I love that one episode. I watched that just before I went on Daniel's channel last time. I did a rewatch of them, and Battlefield is my favourite Sylvester McCoy episode. So definitely, I'll actually tune in that one.
Nice one, excellent. And then of course there'll be the new Who Watch Along. I think because of all the current events. And funny enough, Noel's been criticised for skipping the rest of season 4 to go straight to season 5. Not because he condones cancel culture, but because until we know what's happening, he feels more comfortable just going on with season 5 with the Matt Smith. So we started already with the first one, and I can't remember the second episode.
I don't know. It's
the Beast Below, isn't it? So the Beast Below will be on.
I don't really watch the new stuff. I did watch them all when they first aired, but
that's why I watched.
Stopped watching after.
I watched it with Noel on the TARDIS Zone because when I watched most of New Who first time around, it wasn't Doctor Who to me. I have to be honest. And yeah, for me, I'm a classic purist at the heart. But I have enjoyed it. I've rewatched it with fresh eyes, and we've got a great community there. Yeah. And that's what makes it. It's more about the people you're with.
That's what it is. I still talk to my friend about it, but she's like me. She loves the classics just as much. So we usually stray to the classics. I did used to watch it, and then I basically fell away from it. And then Peter Capaldi came in. I started watching a couple of episodes, and then I just stopped. Mm-hmm. And it's just not. It's the only reason I started watching it again was because Capaldi was in it, because I like him as an actor. But I just felt I find the stories, the new ones, all flash and no bang.
Yeah. Listen, I was given the choice by Noel to be either on the New Who panel or the classic panel. I mean, there was no hesitation at all. Classic all the way. Tom's my man. I'm there for that. That for me is
I've done a Tom. I've cosplayed this Tom.
Nice. I've got a Tom Baker coat, the brown velvet one.
I've not got a velvet one. Mine's is more of a tweedy one. But my daughter knitted me the scarf for my 50th. So
nice.
I just dug bits and pieces out, and that's what I did. And I think I put a picture up on Twitter with Katie Manning.
Nice.
With I was done as Tom. So, but then again, still had my beard, so it didn't look quite. I basically took the curly hair off because it was too hot, and I still had my beard, so it didn't look quite right. But I had the outfit on. I just put it down as he was an old man now.
There you go. In canon. There we are.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much, Problem, for being on and being such a fantastic guest.
Pleasure.
And next week, I will be doing season 2, maybe for the first half hour. I don't know what I'll speak about after that. And I'll hopefully have Wendology and Daniel. Sorry, I forgot who I've got for next week. And then we'll mix it up, hopefully again, have you back on.
Yeah, whenever you want.
Back on again and just go through it right up until season 5. And I know after season 5 you don't care.
Well, I mean, it might be the best reason to have me on because, I'll be watching it with fresh eyes, but definitely have me on for season 5.
Sometimes we need somebody to criticise what we think is good.
There you go.
Because just because we think it's good doesn't necessarily mean it is good. It just means that we find it.
It's all opinion, and we can all survive it.
But thank you very much, and thank you everybody in the chat. I had planned to actually do a Cockney Spock and actually just put them all up as I was going down. Then I realised I was just too caught up in the conversation, and I forgot.
It's like that sometimes. Forgive us.
I basically, but thank you everyone for being here. Remember, hit the like button.
And Alan, of course.
And remember, I'm not old. I'm classic. And smeg out, smeg heads.
Smee.